And a warm welcome to all of you to Fortune India's Most Powerful Women Awards. My name is Kavya R. Chavali, and I'm mighty delighted to be the host for this spectacular evening. Now, let me also inform all those who are present here, I'm going to request everyone to take your seats because this edition of Fortune India's Most Powerful Women is presented by HSBC and powered by Unnati, our celebration partner, Johnny Walker. That being said, as we're about to get started, I must also inform the fact that I'm just so happy that we're all getting to meet some of the women leaders, all of us for that matter, right here in person after the 2 COVID hit years. So it's really interesting to actually indulge in all these discussions right here in person. While I do believe it's almost 5 p.m. on a weekday, it's not going to be easy to get all the members of the audience come right over here. So I'm going to thank you all for being here in time and on time. But that being said, while I do see there's a limited audience, soon it's going to get filled up. Can we have an unlimited round of applause from all those who are present here to give it a cheerful start to Fortune India's Most Powerful Women in Business? With that, to set the tone for the evening, I'd now like to invite on stage Mr. Rajiv Dubey, Editor-in-Chief, Fortune India. So let's have a round of applause one more time. Please help me welcome on stage Rajiv Dubey.
Thank you, Kavya. Thank you so much. Good evening and a very warm welcome to all of you at Fortune India's Most Powerful Women Awards here in Mumbai. This emerges from the 12th edition of the Most Powerful Women special issue that we do. This is the 6th edition of the MPW Awards in India. The MPW draws its inspiration, its legacy from our parent Fortune Inc., which has been publishing MPW for a quarter of a century. The first edition actually came out in 1998. We are here today to celebrate the achievements of some of India's finest women leaders across business, economy, and the government. The past few years have been particularly enthralling in this journey as we have been witness to a new trend of enterprising women leaders who have gone on to create some of India's largest unicorns. A few of those who you will be meeting in the sessions here today. The Fortune India MPW exercise is more than a 3-month-long elaborate process that culminates in the annual awards night, like the one we will be part of here tonight. We start off with a much larger list of nearly 150 of the most inspiring women leaders in the country, not just within the country, but also those of Indian origin who are making a mark globally. This list is then narrowed down gradually to the final 50, applying filters of time, which is the trailing 1 year in this case, their impact on their businesses, their impact on their industries, and finally their impact on the society as a whole. And so the women leaders whose achievements we are going to celebrate here today are truly the best in class. We have a power-packed award ceremony this evening. Our guest of honor, Mrs. Smriti Zubin Irani, Union Minister for Women and Child Development and Minister of Minority Affairs, is an achiever in the country's polity in her own right. She will be felicitating the winners. Mrs. Irani is not just the youngest Union Cabinet Minister in the government, but is also the first woman to hold office as Minister for Education and Minister of Textiles. But before the award ceremony, we have 3 interesting panel discussions that look at the stellar role women leaders are playing in business and economy today. The first panel on diversity in core sectors looks at the impact in areas where women power has not been the norm traditionally. The second panel discusses the entrepreneurial explosion taking place across the country as leaders come into their own. It's a sea change from women employees to women founding and leading their businesses, often breaking new frontiers such as the liquor industry. Their businesses are finding solutions to issues that have plagued the country for years. That augurs well for the future of this nation. The last panel of the day is on workforce mirroring the consumer, the Great Connect. As companies grow, they are looking for a diverse workforce that includes not just women, but LGBTQ colleagues, senior citizens, and people from different regions. That brings greater innovation in creating and delivering more relevant products and services to the consumers. I hope you will find this evening valuable and insightful and a time well spent. Thank you all once again and look forward to another year of sparkling performance by women achievers.
Thank you very much, Rajiv, for setting the tone for this phenomenal evening. That being said, we're about to start off the evening with our very first panel discussion on diversity in core sectors. Now, traditionally, there have been core sectors where women's participation has been limited, but much of this is actually historical. Today, women leaders are breaching these fortresses and making a mark for themselves, not just as employees, but also as leaders and path breakers. So this particular panel discussion will be spearheaded by Ajita Shashidhar, Editor-at-Large, Fortune India. So I'm going to invite Ajita on stage to set the tone and to also invite her fellow panelists. Over to you, Ajita.
Welcome once again to Fortune India's Most Powerful Women in Business Awards. So time for the first panel discussion, and today we're going to discuss about diversity in the core sector, which I'm told is a very important topic of discussion in boardrooms today. So let me have my panelists on the stage now. Our first panelist is Mr. Karan Tutlani of Sodexo India. Mr. Rohin Nadir, KPMG. And Ms. Mahika Shishodia of Lodha. Thank you for making time for this discussion. So we all know that inclusion and diversity is important. And especially in the COVID era, we find a lot of organizations accelerating their diversity agenda, and they're doing a great job. But in certain sectors, some of the traditional sectors like real estate or even manufacturing, automobiles, there's still some concern when it comes to diversity, and the companies are finding it a challenge to attract more women into their workforce. So let's see what our panelists have to say. So Karan, I would like to start with you. So how important is diversity in the core sector?
I think diversity is very, very important. It's the right thing to do. What we did, and I know, when you sit in boardrooms, numbers are very important because companies are listed, financials are important. So let me give an example. So we did a study across the business, and we realized that teams which are diverse have 18% better performance on engagement and profit. So if that's not a strong enough reason to drive this agenda, then what else? Right? Because mostly the reasons and excuses we always hear from people are financial in nature. But this is something that comes across very, very clearly from a study point of view.
So for you and Sodexo, I remember you telling me when I visited you at your office a couple of weeks ago that diversity is not necessarily gender. You kind of have extended it to senior citizens. You have a lot of people from the LGBTQ community. Correct. So, how does that kind of really impact growth? How does it, help improve productivity in general?
See, globally, it's a very important topic for us. So it starts right from the top, right from the chairwoman of the company. Right? So it starts from there. And we believe diversity is the right thing to do from an organization point of view. We've seen a lot of cases, we talk about core sector, right? We see when I go and see clients, it's 95%, 100% male population. You sit in meetings and there are only men in meetings. And the common reasons we always hear is, we don't have the right talent, or, women are not flexible, and multiple reasons. But there are organizations like Sodexo which have shown and proved that if you have the right intent, there is talent available. there is the right agenda to be driven as an organization, we also a lot of times push our clients to go on that journey. We want to lead by example, which is why we actually hired transgender at our client locations, where clients didn't think it was possible. So we actually, once we did that, we realized that clients started to believe that it's possible, it's a talent that's available in the market. There are organizations that actually facilitate the growth of these individuals. So if you believe in it, you have to do it, and you have to lead by example. And we've clearly seen that even the behavior of people around changes. All men team don't behave well, by the way. But when you put a lady in the room, when you put a transgender in the room, let me tell you the kind of conversations that people have. People are much more polite. People are much more empathetic. The language changes. And these are the softer aspects of it. People may not say it overtly, but you clearly see that when there are women in the room, when there are transgenders, when there are LGBTQs in the room, the amount of empathy in the room and the kind of quality of conversations that happen, they automatically go up, whether you like it or not.
So Rohan, coming to you. In fact, Rohan has a weird kind of dilemma. He heads an all-women team. So, in fact, he was asked, recently as to where's the diversity, because there are only women. So it'll be interesting to hear from you as to, all women. What kind of a difference do they make? And also, how are you looking at bringing in diversity?
Hi. So I have an all-women team, which is interesting. It wasn't always all women. In the last 2 years, it has become all women. It's interesting, and I'll just throw out a couple of thoughts for us to go on. One, women leaders don't like to be called women leaders. They just like to be called leaders. And I think that's a very important point to keep in mind. Number two, the hardest working people I know, one was my ex-boss, who was a woman, and there are people in my team who are smarter and harder working than me, and I think most people I know. So this entire thing around women, can they work hard or not, I'm just putting it out there. Number three, I'm not an I&D expert, I head capability development. So from a skilling perspective, when we look at the skilling landscape, we don't distinguish between men and women. But I can tell you this, that when women in their roles are not the primary caregivers, I have seen that the amount of drive and energy they have towards what are considered classic socio-economic indicators of success, which are typically considered male bastion, they go after exactly the same things, which is promotions and money and everything else which we say is challenging, right? Networking. No, if they are not the primary caregivers, I have seen that they go after exactly the same thing and very successfully. So I think those have been very interesting learnings. I don't have a view of the conversations become more sensitive. I am on these all-women team calls, and typically I am the only guy, so I don't think I have had the benefit of that. The conversations flow the way they do. But I have seen this, that you have to become, I have had to flex my leadership style slightly over the last 2 years. I've seen that there is a desire to have a more, I'm not a very relationship-oriented boss, I have been told, in feedback, but I've had to work on that over the last at least 2 years, where now I'm a lot more aware of what's happening in people's lives, and I've been given feedback that that's something which is considered a good thing. So today I was asking one of my second-in-lines that, why did you stick around? Okay, I have to go on to this panel. And she said that, you're an amazing boss. So I'm just ending with that right now. Everyone, I'm an amazing boss. At least that's what the general consensus is. So I'm just going to stop there.
Thank you. Mahika, you're in a sector which is male-dominated. People generally, the perception is that a woman is not meant to work in the real estate sector. And I was just talking to the joint managing director of Brigade Group the other day, and she was telling me that, on the contrary, some of the best negotiations are done by her women employees. So So how difficult is it for you to kind of attract women in the middle level and senior level in the organization?
Thank you. So yes, you're right. I mean, real estate is amongst the largest contributors to the GDP. So we, as a sector, we have greater responsibility to be inclusive. And that's very, very important to us and for us. We are very conscious of that at Lodha. I think even when you look at it from the business perspective, we are dealing with consumers who are diverse, right? And to get a better understanding of those consumers, it is important for us to have a diverse workforce. And I think the barriers that exist are similar to those of other sectors, which would be like manufacturing or anything else, where I think the biggest barriers for women are the social and the cultural barriers that exist in society. It's definitely not skills. We know that for example, like the gross enrollment ratio in higher education for men and women is equal in our country. So we're typically, we're equally employable. But women still drop out of the workforce when they get married or they have children. And there's much more to this than just skills gap. And I think the answer lies in sort of unlocking the social and cultural barriers.
So what really can be done, Karan, to kind of, actually attract more women into the workforce, if not just women, but across, it could be, other gender, or it could be, people from different cultures. What really needs to be done to, from a policy level, from a strategy level? We all know that companies are kind of doing their best, but is there anything that extra mile that one needs to go to kind of really bring in that diversity?
I think the first thing we need to do is change the mindset of leaders we have in the organization. I think it starts from there. And usually we hear examples or reasons that women don't work late, their safety is an issue, leaves and stuff like that, right? But if the approach, I'll give an example. We work with a very large client of ours. They opened a huge manufacturing plant which is about 12,000 people. 2 hours outside of Bangalore, right? So it's a remote location. It's not in the middle of the city. They have a 70% diversity rate. 70% of the people working in manufacturing plant, which is considered, oh, girls can't work there, are women. So obviously when we partnered with them, that gave us enough motivation. And today, at a country level, I work at a 20% diversity. But at that particular location, I have a 50% diversity rate. And this is not in the middle of the city. Usually, you'd say that it's the middle of the city, it's more accessible. But what did we do? We clearly hired people, from states who needed employment. We gave them accommodation, we gave them food, we placed them closer to where the interest was, and we gave them the right safety, security, principles in place. And it's possible. It's not that it's not possible. The point is, did you want to do it? If you want to do it, you can do it. We generally what we do is, and to Rohin's point, right? The issue we see is if for primary caregivers, that's where the challenge is, right? Because that's where they have to take care of their families, they have to go back home. So, to expect a primary caregiver to travel 2 hours, and then she has to go home, cook food, take care of the child, that becomes very, very challenging. So what we started to do was we started to offer part-time employment, for some of these, females. We said, why don't you come work for us for 4 hours, 5 hours, you pick the window you want to work in, and we will give you a role of your choice, which suits your capability. The point is, do you want it enough or not? If you don't want females to work in your organization, there are enough and more excuses why it does not work. But if you really want to make it happen, flexi hours is a classic example. As an organization, COVID taught us flexi hours. The general common excuse is manufacturing cannot go flexi hours. Why not? Because most manufacturing plants work at least 16 hours, if not 24. Then the other reasons you always hear is women can't work night shifts. So we need to then, manage the male who are working in rotation. I have seen females, I have seen organizations which have had women working in night shifts. What is the biggest worry women have? safety and security. If you are able to provide that to them, why would women not want to work in night shifts? So, it's more the mental barrier that has to be taken off.
Yeah, it's more the block that women don't want to work.
Absolutely.
Okay. Coming back to you, Mahika, you have a lot of blue-collared employees in your workforce. So what are you doing for them?
So yeah, I mean, I'll talk from what we're doing as an organization and also, beyond what it is that we're doing. I'll just tell you this quick anecdote of this one woman. Her name is Vandana, and she lives at one of our developments, Palava, and she's a graduate. She was working with a working with a large bank as a data entry officer. It's an entry-level job. She was earning like 17,000 rupees, and when she got married and she had children, she left her job because the job was 2 hours away. She had her household responsibilities to manage. She was the primary caregiver, and what we realized through her story is that this is not a unique story. This is the story of almost every woman in India. And most working women are also doing 2 full-time jobs. They are managing the household and they're doing their day job. And it's almost like we're setting up women for something extraordinary, almost to fail, right? And I think that's the thing that needs to change. And we, through this program Unnati, we're trying to develop a platform where work goes to women rather than women going to work. And we really believe that our economy and the way we work needs to be redesigned, especially for Indian women, given that these cultural barriers exist. And we are developing workspaces near residential hubs, which where we expect the employers to have a preference to hire more women, and we're giving those spaces at a very heavy discount, at 75% discount to any employer who can absorb this workforce. And along with the space, we are helping women skill themselves or just kind of match the skill gap, because mostly they've been out of work for 5 to 7 years, and that really has an effect on your confidence. So skill, and then also support them in childcare, because it's a real thing. It's seen as a woman's responsibility in our country. So having the support infrastructure for all of that is the other thing that we're doing. We are seeing, even in our own business, construction, like a lot more women joining in. It's not necessarily seen as something safe and by families. So that is something that that kind of will change with time because of all the safety precautions we take. But yeah, this is definitely something.
What's the diversity rate in your organization?
So construction, we still have, and the diversity is pretty low over there. Like I said, because of the cultural factors, we still have quite a few women, but in the management, most departments have equal men and women in like senior management, middle-level management, and a lot of teams have more women as well. So yeah.
So coming to skilling, now that we're talking about skilling, Rohin, I would like to hear from you. So we are living in an era of automation where artificial intelligence, IoT, all that is the order of the day. And we hear of acute skill shortage. Companies are struggling to get, good talent. So in an environment like that, how would diversity help? And also, how would, would STEM education, would companies investing in STEM education be a solution?
So before I start off, I just want to put this out there. I've seen a lot of people talk about that, women have a natural tendency towards multitasking or some other skill. I don't like that idea, because see, what happens is it pigeonholes the genders. That, women are good at this and they're not good at this. Men are good at this and men are not good at this. I would say, just put that aside as a primary thought. The second piece is you're absolutely right. There is an acute skill shortage across India. We are constantly looking for new ways to leverage the talent pool which might have been ignored. So women especially there, the ones who have, let's say, you got married, you took a break, or you had a child and then you were a primary caregiver, so you took a break, or you're taking care of someone else. So the good thing is that we have become, over the last few years, incredibly hybrid as an organization. So our ability to offer roles which are flexible or even remote for that matter has dramatically improved. And that has allowed us to tap a significantly larger pool of smart talent everywhere. So that's one part of it. The other part of this is, you spoke about STEM and investment in STEM. Yeah, the literature is clear that STEM has been considered classical male domain. A lot of inclusion and diversity leads organizations talk about investing more in STEM. I think that's a great idea. But I'm also going to quote this 2019 study, which is on the internet, and you can all look at it. It talks about in the Nordic countries, which are the most egalitarian in terms of their social construct, where the assumption is that people are not picking up education or jobs as per the gender norms or gender expectations. There is not a lot of cross-pollination happening between what are considered classically male roles, male sectors, and classically female sectors. So they are still seeing a high disposition of women going into what, like for example, healthcare or education, not as much into manufacturing or engineering for that matter. So that's a very interesting question, that if you look at an egalitarian society where apparently a lot of this work has been done, why is that still the pattern? And that throws up interesting question that what are the choices people are making? For example, are gender still viewing certain roles as very male-oriented or female-oriented and hence not making the move? So that's what I would put out.
So what kind of conversations, I mean, that is from a KPMG perspective, but what kind of conversations are you having with, with the companies you consult?
Okay, so there is definitely conversations with the companies we consult about when we look at diversity, about how they are doing on diversity indicators. A lot of them. We have got, and it's a part of a larger global agenda to make sure that we are driving a more inclusive workforce across the globe, and we are also doing that for our clients. Because, as you said at the start, the research is very clear that diversity does lead to better financial results. But the question is that hiring diverse talent is not enough. Do you give them a space on the table? Like the research on high-performing teams actually indicates that it is psychological safety, which is an opportunity to offer a point of view without fear of repercussions, and equal airtime, which actually is an indicator of a high-performing team. So imagine that you hired 2 women, and it's, as you said, it's a room full of men, and they get crowded out. The psychological phenomena is called crowding. You don't give as much time. Women don't get as much airtime. Then diversity is failing. It's not working the way it's supposed to. So one is to actually work at a strategy level and say, listen, what's your diversity agenda? What are your diversity goals? But the other piece is to actually look at it at a culture conversation level. How are you making that happen? And then ensuring that you are actually being flexible. Like for example, in my team, I have a 21-year-old who's finished college, and she is a mountaineer, and we are helping her do her postgrad with us. I also have someone who is essentially telling me that, Rohan, I want to be your successor in the next few years. Then I also have someone who's a recent mother, and she wants to right now take a lot more flexible, explore flexible working options. You need to be able to cater to all of them in a very transparent, consistent fashion. That's what it would take.
Karan, how important is it for organizations to invest in STEM in order to attract a more diverse talent?
Ajita, what we're doing is more than STEM, we are focusing on MAPS, which is the apprentice. So we actually believe that if you take on more apprentices, you are able to give them the right training, right development, and then they have a career option to go into different roles. Because because NAPS is nothing but at the start of that career, right? So we're taking people and we give them access to jobs they would probably never thought existed, because we're looking at a start of people that don't know what career they want to get into. All they're looking for is to make a living, to get a job. So our focus in the organization is to have more naps, and focus on that, because that is where you can actually make a difference. So we currently have about 1,000 naps, already, and the intention is that as an organization with 50,000 people, 10% of our workforce should be apprentices who then eventually after 6 to 9 months move into regular roles. So that's the whole thought process we have. More than STEM, we're focusing on the naps piece.
In what kind of roles do you bring them in, and at what levels of education are they? And how does it work in the sense?
We bring them in at all roles, right? So as an organization, we help organizations focus on their non-core. So if you are a manufacturing organization, you focus on, let's say, making a car. But I will help manage all the peripheral services. As an organization, I have more than 200 job roles that I cater to. So that is the amount of option that a person has. So and we look at people who are who finished school but could not study further because they could not afford to go to college, or people who are school dropouts because their financial situation wasn't such. So we're looking at that strata of people, and we're trying to give them employment. As a part of the NAP scheme also, we help people finish education. So if their intention is also to finish education, we support them with that. We help them graduate so that their career progression is much faster as compared to what it would have been had they not been graduate. So we're looking at different roles across, not only in white collar, but also in blue collar.
So these are typically students who are finished their 12th, they join in as apprentices?
Yes, students finished their 10th, finished their 12th, dropouts, couldn't finish studies, whole range.
Mahika, how are you skilling both your white collar as well as blue collar women employees? What are you doing differently?
I think for us, we see skilling as only one part of the problem. We really want to focus on what happens after the skilling. Our women, I'm talking specifically about women because our work focuses a lot on women, but in general, this holds true for all different cohorts. Is the productivity greater? And in fact, one of the leading banks, and we have that as a case study as part of our program, developed an all-women data entry office, and they saw that the attrition rate fell down to single digits, and work productivity also increased significantly, and that's measured in terms of the error in the data entry. The focus is much more like post-skilling. What is it that is making women leave work or stay in work, and how is it that we can make a more enabling environment, and not just by ourselves, but having other organizations help us through this journey.
So there's a lot of conversations around gig. So how, coming to you, I would come back to you, Karan. So how would gig employees help? Would again that help in increasing diversity? How does that help? Does it kind of?
Yeah, I think gig is a nice fancy word. I call it part-time. So we always had part-time work earlier as well. So for us, we look more part-time than gig. Because like we mentioned earlier, for primary caregivers, there is a window in which they can work, and there is a window in which they got to take care of their families, their children, and stuff. So if you offer part-time opportunities and employment, especially to women, where you're flexible around the hours that they can come and work, we can see diversity go up quite high. We've seen that in hybrid working, especially in IT and consulting space. We've seen a lot of people. As long as they finish their hours, it's all right what time they start, what time they finish, you manage your calls. COVID taught us that you work 12, 14 hours a day, but you work only 6 hours. Pretty much you manage your calls, then you do your own thing at home, then you go back to your calls, finish your work. So COVID actually taught people a lot of things. From our point of view, we look more from a part-time point of view. We can call it gig. Gig can be part-time. But that's where if you offer employment opportunities as part-time or as gig, like we call it, you can definitely see diversity go. We've seen that in a few of our roles where we were able to hire a lot of women, giving that opportunity to them.
Again, coming back to you, Rohin, what do you think of gig? How would that help in increasing diversity in workforce?
Absolutely. See, as a concept, gig works really well because people who need flexibility have the option of flexibility. But I would be very careful about gig impacting diversity at a culture level, because that depends upon how the gig piece is integrated into the overall workflow. If they are, for example, completely being, if they're working as like third-party contractors, then it might not impact the culture of the organization as much, because they're working at a very tactical level that, you're given a task, you're doing it, you're getting it done, and that's it. For it to impact the culture of the organization, the integration or how they're engaging with the overall work ecosystem, that has to be looked at. If you're only, like, if the person is sitting at home and you never met them and all they are is an email ID and work calls where the person is given work and they just finish it off and that's it, then the chances of them impacting the organization are lower. The impact will happen when, from a diversity perspective, they move into mainstream roles, they rise into the leadership pyramid. That is where actual institutionalized impact is going to happen. But yeah, I think better gig than nothing, because flexibility definitely is a game changer when it comes to building diversity, irrespective of gender also.
Interesting. So it would be nice to get your parting thoughts. What is the biggest, Mahika, we can start with you. What is the biggest mindset change that is needed by organizations in order to, build a more diverse workforce? What is the biggest mindset change?
I think for organizations, the biggest mindset change is to allow for diversity in the truest sense, to accommodate it in whatever ways and forms that it comes in. And I think it'll take time because organizations have structures and processes and all of that. But I think it's very, very important for organizations to really account for it. We talk about COVID and it teaching us about flexibility, but the maximum workforce participation, female workforce participation drop rate happened during COVID because that flexibility did not translate well for women. So I think we really need to think of it deeply and understand and sort of design systems to work around people rather than people working for a system.
Thank you. Rohan, what are your parting thoughts? What is the biggest mindset change that is required?
Okay, so I'm not a huge proponent of people doing anything for the collective altruistic good. I think no one does anything because it's a good thing to do. If organizations are very clear that it makes business sense, which it does, and remember that, processes and systems can be realigned and redesigned, and I've seen it happen. So that's it. As long as you're very clear that it makes business sense, you're going to make it happen.
Karan, your parting thoughts.
I think more than focusing on diversity as a subject, we should talk about equal employment opportunity. So as leaders, if there are open positions in your organization, we should definitely mandate that if a person's getting hired, how many profiles were presented which were men and which were women. I think the bigger problem is that it starts there. So if we need to really make a difference, it has to start with equal opportunity. I think that's where we all fail. And that's where the change will happen. If we as leaders, business heads mandate that there has to be equal opportunity, if you're hiring one role, how many CVs did you interview? How many male CVs, how many female CVs? If you start there, I think your job is half done. I think that's where the problem is. I think that's where the mindset change needs to happen.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
I'd like to request our panelists to please remain on stage, and if I could please invite Mr. Arun Singh, Business Head, Fortune India, to please come forward and felicitate all our panelists for their valuable time and some very diverse insights. I'd also like to request Ajita to join Mr. Arun Singh and our panelists for a group photograph. So let's have you all come together for a quick Kodak moment. Thank you once again. A very interesting panel discussion there. We managed to actually gather some diverse thoughts from all of our speakers. That being said, we are now about to set the stage for our next panel discussion on the entrepreneurial explosion. Now, increasingly, women-founded startups are gaining traction. Already, around 15% of Indian unicorns have one woman co-founder. The number is only going to increase, but most importantly, how will things change as inspiring women leaders or leaders who are women, or for that matter, even founders, move from being part of the workforce to being the driving force of the businesses? So that's a big question coming up, and it's only befitting that we get the thoughts from our panelists who are about to join us next. But to spearhead this panel discussion, we have with us Mr. V. Keshav Dev, Deputy Editor and Editor Lists, Fortune India. So Keshav will be here to extract perspectives from his fellow panelists. But that being said, let me go ahead and also invite our very esteemed panelists who are about to come together and answer these pertinent questions. First up, I'd like to invite on stage Ms. Divya Gokulnath, co-founder Byju's. Let's have a round of applause to welcome Divya Gokulnath on stage. Anjali Bansal, founding member of Anna Climate Fund, member Niti Aayog, Evolution Review Committee, and board member ONDC. I believe she's on the way and she's about to join us in a short while. I'd like to further invite Mr. Vivek Gambhir, CEO, Boat Lifestyle. Ms. Devika Bhagat, founder, Adventurous Spirits. And Ghazal Alag, co-founder and she's about to join the panelists in a short while. But that being said, we're not about to delay the discussion because it's a very, very important question. I'm going to quickly hand over the proceedings to Keshav. Over to you then.
Good evening. Hello. Yeah, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure interacting with a panel of super achievers, and what makes them unique is that most of, in fact, all of their businesses touch our lives one way or the other. In fact, we are missing out on two, but we had Ghazal Alag, who runs Mama Earth. So as a toddler, she has her influence. The time when it goes to school, the baby is there. To go to school, you have Divya Gokulnath's Byju's. And if you want to have fun listening to music, you have Boat Lifestyle, and Vivek Gambhir is anchoring that. And I had kept this line for Bansal, Anjali Bansal, but she's not there. But I had said that at the end of it all, if you want to hit the bar, then you will have to pick up a drink from Adventurous Spirits. And that's Devika Bhagat. But more on a serious note, this panel discussion comes against the backdrop of a real entrepreneurial explosion, because as of 2022, we have more than 85,000 startups. And of these startups, nearly 18% is run by either a woman founder or a woman co-founder. And in fact, of all the deals that has happened between the past 2 years, 17% investment has gone into women-oriented startups. But the icing on the cake is that it's not just startups, even real-world MSME, we have seen a near doubling of numbers. From 4 lakh, the number of women-registered entities have gone up to 9 lakh in just 1 year. So that's some serious explosion out there. So against that backdrop, let me start off with Vivek. Since you started off your career with a consultancy firm, then moved on to join a conglomerate, and then you finally took a break, and then you made the choice of joining an entrepreneurial system. So if you could take us what's really happening in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think what's quite exciting is that mindsets are changing. But what is still sobering is that if you look at the US data, 2% of venture capital funding only went to women. In EU, it was 0.7%. Now, the great thing is India has 15 million women-owned enterprises, which is the highest number in the world, probably. But 80% of them are actually one-woman enterprises, right? India ranks in the 20th percentile on the Global Women Entrepreneurship Index. So while there has been some positive movement, I think a lot more needs to be done. And my belief is that unless you learn from things like Swachh Bharat and big missions like that, I think if you're truly serious about it, a lot of initiatives are there. But to truly put focus, we almost need a national mission for women ownership. I think if we have something of this sort, there are lots of ideas which will come in. There's also a significant change required in the investment community. If the investment committees of venture capital companies and private equity companies are largely run by men, guess what? There will be a bias to keep on choosing companies which are going to be run by men. So the investment community, access to finance, a much deeper mission around women ownership. I think if we get these right, the building blocks are there, and we actually know that women leaders tend to perform better than men leaders. And there's enough data from the post-COVID world which shows that women are much better at handling crises. If you look at the models of leadership, which are moving from command and control to much more of a collaborative leadership, women tend to do better. Women are extremely keen to take entrepreneurial roles, but we do still need a lot of work to create an enabling platform for that.
So what, according to you, is the biggest trigger that's really fueling this?
Sorry?
What is the single biggest trigger right now that is fueling the ecosystem? Is it the flow of capital, or is it that great ideas out there?
I think it's a multi-pronged answer with these situations, right? It is access to capital definitely is a very important criteria. It's having more women in boardrooms. While we do have laws for that, more women in boardrooms, much more access to sponsorship, having stronger women sponsors. But whenever we talk about an ecosystem, it's never a one-size-fits-all answer. So you do need 3 or 4 enabling factors for all of these things to be able to come in together to provide the impetus for this now.
So we have Anjali joining us.
Hey, Anjali.
Thank you, Anjali. So, Divya, if you could share your thoughts
I
on
was just
how...
telling him the diversity on this panel is
now
not reflective of the diversity, unfortunately,
So
either in
you
the
know,
workplace.
Divya, I was joking with Ajita beforehand saying that, look, I actually feel like a misfit among such capable women.
No, we want you by our
Right.
side. When the whole world is listening to you, that's when things
That's
happen,
true.
not when only half of it is.
But I said this is how women generally feel on a daily basis, right?
I think we should let the diversity stay and just focus on the entrepreneurial thing, because that will only make us more squeamish out here. So, Divya, if you could share us, what really led you to join Baiju in his mission, and what were your initial thoughts? Were you keen on joining as a co-founder? What really went through when you made that decision?
Wow, okay. So, I found one point very interesting in what he said about entrepreneurial explosion. I'll just say that and then I'll get into my journey, where he spoke about the 20 million new people, women especially, and that explosion is actually happening because it's the age of the digital entrepreneur, right? Literally, we can start up anywhere that we want. And last week when I met a young woman and I asked her, where's your office? She pointed to her shiny bag, which was her laptop, which means that today, anywhere, anyhow, with the right mindset, we can actually start up. So this boom which is happening and which is very relevant to today's discussion, I feel is the reason for this entrepreneurial explosion. Entrepreneurial explosion is possible, is inclusive, it's diverse. It's diverse because it can also start from home, not necessarily from a formal workplace. Now that being said, so my journey started as a teacher, and it started 15 years ago. And when I said this to somebody yesterday, they said, "What, were you a child when you started?" I said, "No, I was 21." And so when I was 21, I walked into my first classroom and I taught, and it was so much impact that I felt 100 students, 4 years younger than me, I was helping them take a very difficult exam to get a job that they love. And just to look a bit older than them, because I was just a bit older than them, and I just wore a sari, and thanks to that I can wear that in 5 minutes today. And well, that's how my story started. And I became a teacher. And from a teacher, we built teams together. Somewhere along the way, I also ended up marrying my co-founder, Baiju. Yeah, and we have 2 kids, a 9-year-old and a 2-year-old. The age gap is because our app was launched in 2015, which takes all our attention, time, the elephant in the room. But yes, well, that's how the journey has grown. So we've done a lot. We've grown from a team of, say, 6 people to 50,000 people today, from literally 100 students to 150 million students across the world, to 70 lakh paid students, subscribers. But I think most importantly, over the last 24 months, what technology has helped us do is to enable education for all. So today we have 55 lakh children who are learning with us for free across India, from the deepest parts of the country, half of them girls. And on the side, what we've seen is that organically, 20,000 mothers are now going to give the 10th standard exam next year. There was no push for this. So this, for me, is explosion.
Wow. Anjali, we were just setting up the context, of what really is fueling this boom, and especially for women entrepreneurs. And for someone who had started out very early, on the corporate career, and you've seen there, been there, and now you have made the switch to an entrepreneur. So what are the building blocks that's really fueling this boom?
First of all, apologies for being a little bit delayed. I can safely park that with our airlines. Delighted to be here, of course, with so many friends, and wonderful to see Vivek here. I think, let me first start with saying one of the most ironic and frankly tragic things that half the population of the world is considered diverse. So the math doesn't make sense. How can you be 50% of a set and then be a minority or a diversity? But that's the case, and it's massively underrepresented in business for sure, as well as in many aspects of life. I think it's a loss to our species and to society because we are not fully leveraging our talent pool. So with that piece said, my own journey has been one of discovery and somewhat serendipitous discovery along the way. I started with wanting to actually be a scientist and in public service, and then went off to do business instead, and then got involved with microfinance in the early years, saw the incredibly transformative power of innovation. And this was before technology, this was just product innovation around credit, and how that helped to transform the lives of millions of women around the world with providing access to, they call it economic empowerment, but when you economically empower women, it also socially and politically empowers them. That onwards, setting up a company in India was very young. I really knew nothing. I think I jumped into it more out of ignorance than anything else. Then getting into private equity, then turning around a very distressed bank. So all of these have been new things, not necessarily traditionally entrepreneurial, and which I think, it's kind of come full circle from technology, working in ISRO, going off to the US, coming back to India, and being in financial capital, human capital strategy, and now working with founders. And I think addressing the biggest problem facing us as a world, which is climate change. So I think my entrepreneurship comes out of a desire to solve problems, and everywhere from microfinance to now climate change and creating platforms for climate action.
Ghazal, you had a very interesting career trajectory, right? It mentions that you started off as a corporate trainer, then artist, and then mama. Yeah.
It all doesn't make sense, right?
Right, it doesn't.
I think my journey as a woman evolving with desires to be self-independent started very early on. That's how my parents raised me. One of the things that my mother used to very actively talk about was that if you want to make your own choices in life, you have to be financially independent. And what that led to was me trying to figure out various things, but not stop until I was at peace with what I wanted to become, which is where I was just 19 when I took up my first job. This is before finishing my graduation as well, just because I could earn my own pocket money, and that for me at that stage was self-independence. moved on to do that for about 5 years, grew really well in it. Took a break to figure if there was something else that I wanted to explore. Of course, I was looking in the same field, which was around corporate training. But then in the meantime, I also picked up my passion for painting again. And I just realized that when you're good in studies, there's like a certain obligation, right? Be it a boy or a girl, that art is not a serious subject. You're not supposed to take that. And that bias came from my parents as well, right? So maths and science is what you should take or do something out of it. So that was the time when I decided to give myself some importance and my wishes and desires some importance. I picked up my passion, went to New York, got trained. Fortunately, one of my paintings got selected to be exhibited in the New York Academy of Arts. And that's where my career as an artist really started, because then, you know, it's a natural progression where you start getting work. I came back to India. I was selling nationally, internationally, exhibiting, and I thought that was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Imagine when your passion gets you money as well. That's like the perfect job you could ever have. But I think for us, for me and my co-founder, who's also my husband, Varun, things changed when we had our first baby, Agastya. And there was a problem where we were not able to find the right kind of products, and we were ordering from outside of India. And coming from a middle-class family, that spend as well as the energy that went into figuring that entire transit model out was too cumbersome for us. And that's where we decided that you know, it's not worth the hassle. And if nobody else, and by nobody else I mean the bigger brands, were thinking about it, is there something for us to figure out here? And for the first 5 months, I still remember all we did was research. I pulled out 100% of my time out of my passion for painting, and that was also my business back then. I devoted into this, and all we decided was that we'll give ourselves 1 year to see if we can make something out of it or not. And that's how my journey literally started. We figured out the right kind of ingredients that were available in India at the right prices. We launched Mamaearth as a baby care brand in 2016, which is 6 products. Received an overwhelming response from our consumers, and they became our torchbearers. They are the ones still now. I think they are the ones who've helped us be who we are today. And that's how that entire journey evolved for the two of us. I think when I started out, I had absolutely, you know, like a young kid who tries to walk even when he doesn't know how to walk, and he falls again, and he gets up, and he falls again, because he's not afraid, right? You jump him in the air, he's not afraid, he smiles and he laughs. So I think I was that kind of a person back in 2016 who was not thinking about the difficulties or the roadblocks or the gender biases. It was all for me to experience once I got into it. Yeah. But that's the long and short of 6 years that we have spent
So
building.
we'll come back to how you scaled it up, but Devika, this is something that I wanted to ask. Usually after having a drink or two, either you go off to sleep or you say that you love the brand. But you got such an entrepreneurial high that you decided to get into business of making spirits. So what really worked there?
I mean, I don't have a background in the alco-bev industry. My family is not in it. I have been drinking before it was legally allowed. I am a screenwriter since I went to film school. I was a screenwriter from the age of 21. And I always believed in not just telling stories on screen and on OTT platforms now, but also of my story and my life. And the idea was that I was fortunate enough to follow my passion from a very early age of being a writer. And so when it came time to what I, in short, call a midlife crisis, approaching my 40th birthday and wondering what is it that I can do next since I've been doing this for 20 years, a simple answer, what all I'm passionate about. And of course, my co-founder is my husband, so the conversation was always to find something that we both were passionate about. And the experience that we both have had being part of the film and television industry is that we always have to innovate because technology changes, trends change, audience changes, platforms change. And so when the idea came about of what are we passionate about? We were passionate about, yes, we're passionate about sneakers. We're passionate about various other things, but one of the things was we're passionate about discovering different kinds of gins around the world. And can we do that? And again, it was like, how do you enter an industry? I mean, you know how to drink the stuff, but you don't know how to make it, and you don't know how to sell it. And that is where the experience of, perpetually having to innovate and learn in whatever industry that you're in, it gives you the confidence to be able to study and innovate and learn about a completely different industry. And really, we had to go study. We had to go study distillation. We had to go study how alcohol is made. We had to study spirits. And that fear doesn't enter you when, you have to constantly change and innovate, and you're not stuck in just one thing that you've been doing, and you're stuck in it in a hole or in a corner. So it was a dream, it was a passion, and I think having a passion for something that you want to do is the first building block to being able to do it, right?
And what was your reaction, when you said your idea about getting into this business? What was the immediate reaction back home? Was there any pushbacks that came, or your complete family support in this?
So, well, my first drink was given to me by my parents on my 16th birthday. So I think there's been obviously we're talking about India and how there are different economic and social classes, and therefore in certain economic classes for the last 20 to 30 years, the way girls are being brought up in this country, there's a generational shift. In fact, I think in some ways, in certain economic classes above the middle class, we are luckier than boys, because we are told we can do and be anything we want to be. If you want to be an artist or if you want to be an engineer, I think so. Belonging to a family that brought up 3 girls, I'm the youngest of 3 girls, where we were told that we could be and do anything we wanted to be. And of course, watching how my mother, who was a homemaker, who didn't have an occupation and was dependent financially on my father, that, watching her and talking to her and what her desires were always, motivated us to be able to do what we wanted to do, and like you were mentioning, being financially independent. So there was no pushback, because at the end of the day, I read a show called 4 More Shots, Please, which is on Amazon Prime, and on social media, I get a lot of reactions of, do women really drink this much? Women don't really drink, and if they attended any of the fests or the bar takeovers that we do, they would see that there is no distinction in gender. People who like their drink and enjoy their drink. So there was never any pushback, but there have been reactions entering this, especially from the bureaucratic side of things, where they are not as open with me as they are with my husband when it comes to the bureaucracy and the red tapeism of the alcohol business.
We'll come to the biases part. Anjali, there is one piece of statistics which says that India has got now the highest number of startups, but at the pace at which startups are coming, at the double the rate, startups are also closing. And I think 2,000 plus startups just folded last year, despite the fact that they had got funding from Series A, Series C. Still, so what we want to understand out here is the journey from 0 to 1 may not necessarily, they say it's the toughest. And what is that challenge? How does entrepreneur kind of overcome that piece of really scaling up a business from start, despite the fact that you have access to capital?
So I think the whole point around startups is, first of all, closing down a startup is not failure. That is something we must understand in India. If you take risk and starting something new, quote unquote, doing a startup means taking tremendous risk, putting yourself out there. It comes from an original idea, hopefully original, and tremendous passion. And as Ghazal and has spoken about this as well, you have to come. So if it doesn't work, closing it down actually is the smart thing to do. There's absolutely nothing wrong in shutting a startup down. That's part of the journey. It means you shut something down, you say it didn't work, you dust yourself off, you find something else if you still want to be an entrepreneur, and then you go build that. So that's why startups close. And I think we should celebrate failures in the 0 to 1. Better to shut down if you don't get product market fit in 2 years, better to shut down then keep going on, and then using up a whole lot more capital and creating a lot more people that then get dependent on the companies. Nothing wrong in shutting it down.
Ghazal, how did you get your piece
Sorry?
right? Ghazal. How did you get that piece right of, one is that you had a great idea, but to go on and create a brand and, compete against the biggies, how was that initial learning period for you?
Just want to start with, when we started out, nobody thought it was a great idea. Everybody thought that we were making a mistake. Why did we want to lose on the comforts of life that we had to build something which has not been built in India, and the fact that no larger brand is doing it, people, those are the kind of pushbacks I think that you always get. The only thing that we as entrepreneurs were very sure of was that if we can find 100 parents like us looking for a product like this, that we would consider as a product market fit. And for that 100 consumers, we actually did not have to invest a single penny. All we did was went to a baby store in GK Market, stood out there, put up a stall, and just talked to all the mothers who were walking in that store. It was a toy store. They threw us out of the store. They didn't allow us to do that pilot inside. But I think it starts with as small actions as these to get you to a confidence where you feel that this is the right thing for you to do or not, right? Out of that market visit, we were building a brand which we were calling toxin-free. Out of that market visit, what we understood was that people were not able to relate to the word toxin-free. They did not know what toxins were or why should they be avoided. When one of our products said sulfate-free, there were consumers coming in and asking us, what is it free that you are giving with this product? So that gave us the base with which we had to start building the brand, which required a lot of education for the first 6 to 8 months, and we started with that. But I think as you keep growing, rather than just focusing on the bigger milestones, if you set up smaller milestones, and with every milestone achieved is how you move forward, you have the capability to experiment much more, fail fast, and move forward faster. And that, I think, it's not the cost of failure, but it's the right way to learn when running a business, so that even if that idea is not working, you're able to get to know at a stage where you've possibly not invested too much capital. So for me, that's one. Second, I think in our journey, like I've talked about, consumer focus, and I think that's true for any business, anything that you're building, be it a company, be it a technology product, be it any kind of product. When you actually keep asking your consumers what is it that they would appreciate, you will end up moving in the right direction. That has worked for us. While we as founders had a vision when we started out that we are going to be a baby care company, our consumers are the ones who said, why are you limiting yourself to just baby? When you have the entire beauty and personal care space open for you, we would like to experience toxin-free products, right? Now imagine with a vision like us, we might have been fairly small today, but just listening to them made our startup operate in a category which is 10 times larger than just a baby category. And I think that really helps when we say scale up a startup. These are a few building blocks towards doing that.
Devika, in your business and the one that you chose, it's really the guys with the deep pockets, and the MNCs is the ones who rule the space in the spirits and the alcohol. So how did you kind of keep going and create a brand of it? How easy was it?
I mean, we're competing with a lot of big boys, Pernod and Diageo and Campari, Bacardi. And also within the craft spirits, we have 2 major craft spirits players, a Third Eye Distillery and Now Spirits, who are 5 and 6 years old. So coming into it, I think the idea was to really identify, because us and our friends and everybody who we knew were always looking for this, right, for a craft spirit. And were picking it up when they went outside the country or duty free. So we knew that there was a market for it, and a market beyond just 2 companies producing craft spirits. I mean, the UK alone has more than 300 craft distilleries producing just gin. And at this moment, I think we're at about 16 craft gins and, of course, a few rums and whiskeys. So, looking at where we were and what the larger corporations were providing to the market, we knew that there was a space that was there for us and that was going to build. Whether it was, in category A towns and now it's going to category B towns, and in another 10 years we'll see it in category C towns. So the more we grow and the more we create demand, and then it also works the other way.
Vivek, India has never created brands in the space that Boat Lifestyle has created a mark for itself. We had Micromax, which was a strong contender. It ruled the charts, and then it just vanished away. So how do you see this whole evolution for Boat Lifestyle? Do you think it can really continue to be up there and create a market for itself and a brand for itself in the days to come, considering that the technology is so...
I think what's common with whether it's Byju's or Mama Earth, I think a lot of brands, even like Boat, start with a very clear idea of a consumer need, whether it's toxin-free chemicals or education. So the first premise also always has to be is there a consumer need which is either latent today or isn't being satisfied fully? So for example, for Boat, the category was dominated, like you were saying, with very large multinationals. But they were offering fairly fuddy-duddy, expensive, boring products. Our website is called boatlifestyle.com. So we wanted to, first of all, the first important thing always is create innovative products. So our products are the best quality for that particular price point. The second is you marry pricing with great quality, great features, be innovative. And then the final piece is around marketing. Add some drama to the category. Initially, we actually sponsored the Lakme Fashion Week. So you had models actually walking around with Boat headphones. But ultimately, I think for any brand in India, being able to combine affordability with quality and innovation and availability, that's the secret sauce in terms of being able to address the masses, which is where I think the big opportunity is. The great thing with Indian consumers is that they are very willing to actually give Indian brands a chance, whether it's Byju's, whether it's Mama Earth. You see Indian consumers, and today we are seeing, this year we will be actually manufacturing 15 million units in India, right? And there's a huge amount of pride now for brands being born in India, brands that are made in India. Unlike other markets of the world, where there is obviously a big allure towards global brands, Indians, if you give the right quality at the right price with the right features, will actually give you the fighting opportunity. So I think we are very hopeful. And what's quite interesting is that just by selling in India, we are now the #2 brand in the world after Apple for the number of units that we are selling. So just think about when we go global, what kind of an opportunity could there be? So definitely, I think early days, but I think I feel very optimistic about the love and the right that Indian consumers have given for Indian brands.
Divya, for you, the question is completely different. What next? Once you have gone the scale, you have scaled much beyond the Indian borders. Now you are going into foreign shows. So what's the next holy grail for Byju's?
To do whatever we are doing even better. There's no room for complacency, right? In India alone, we have 260 million students, school-going children. We have 1.5 billion school-going children in the world. When we have our choice of color, when we have our choice of stationery, why can't we have our choice of the style, the pace, the size of learning which is suited to us? That is the question, and that the day when we can answer that, when we have a personalized learning solution for every child in this world going to school or unable to go to school today, that's when we'll stop. So the mission is very long term. I think we have a long way to go. And you asked me what's next. If you look at the growth, the journey that we've been to, so while we've been the complete offline classroom model in 2007, 8, 9, 10, and in 2015, we went completely online when we launched the app. 2015 July was the month in which Digital India was launched. And 2015 August was when Byju's, the learning app, was launched. The India story and the Byju's story are very strongly intertwined with each other. And you spoke about the startup ecosystem in India. What have we reached today? We're about to become the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. We are third in terms of number of unicorns, second in terms of number of startups, first in terms of the speed in which we're adding new startups every day. This shows that the appetite is great, and for our segment, which is education, which has a double bottom line of doing well and doing good, you can really create impact at scale. And why is that possible? It's because of the country that we are in. I believe that if you make in India for India, you're actually making for the world. The diversity you have, every turn you take, it's like creating for a different country. That sort of diversity gives you global exposure. It helps you create for the world. When you're creating for 1.4 billion people, you're creating for 1/6 of humanity. That is scale. We are set to have 20% of the world's global workforce. We are set to have 21% of the middle-aged population of the world. These are big numbers. So India is at the right place at the right time. The global edtech market is growing at 16%. India's edtech market is growing at 40%. What does it say? India is soon going to be the edtech capital of the world. So I couldn't be more optimistic. I couldn't be any complacent. If anything, we are roaring to go, stronger than ever. I would not say fast and furious, but fast yet steady.
We would love to have this panel discussion going on, but unfortunately I have to just wrap up with one question for each of the panelists. How has entrepreneurship changed you as a person, and what will be your one advice that if you would give out to your audience?
I think entrepreneurship...
A short answer for sure.
This is not going to be a short answer from anybody, I don't think. So in some ways, this is probably my third gig in different shapes and forms of entrepreneurship. I think it is the most exhilarating, learning, challenging journey. After a while, you forget what it is like to not be an entrepreneur. It's tremendously empowering. You carry so much responsibility because, after all, when you start up something new, it's not just your passion, but also whether you have consumers and customers to whom you're making a brand promise, or you have, in my case, funding entrepreneurs, and we are promising them that we'll be with you on your journey, and people who sign up with you for your vision and passion, who work with you. It's a tremendous responsibility. At the same time, it's such a huge opportunity to make a difference and to create, and I don't mean impact in the traditional sense of the word, but in markets like India, and Divya, you rolled out all the right statistics there. In a market like India, how could you possibly even think about building a successful business which does not have a double bottom line? So I think in a market like India, in our economy, in our society, where we are standing today, is both an opportunity and a responsibility to build very successful, commercially scaled businesses. In my case, we are focused on climate. Climate action, you solve for India, you solve for the world, and that's the opportunity.
I think if you could just wrap up in one single line the advice that you could give out.
You're putting me under pressure now. I think if I have to seriously summarize it in one line, I would say entrepreneurship has made me much more confident and has increased my appetite for taking risks and optimizing for success massively. So Mamaearth is actually my third startup. I had two more before that, which I failed at. And we wouldn't have been talking about them if it was not for Mamaearth. So I consider them as my stepping stones. But I think the only thing that I've taken away is that when you put your mind and might behind figuring a problem out and solving it, you figure it out.
Okay.
Devika? Because we're a young company and because I was a very intrinsic person as a writer, I think what entrepreneurship has taught me the most is not to try and do everything myself. To be a team leader, to delegate responsibility, and to learn to let go.
Yeah, Vivek?
So I'm not an entrepreneur, right? But I think of myself as a professional entrepreneur, if there is a word like that. And so for me, the big learning has been in this journey is how do you really add muscle to the hustle, and how do you add method to the madness?
Divya.
So Vivek, you have been my mentor.
Thank you.
As also a mentor to, I don't know, possibly thousands of entrepreneurs out there. There is so much to learn. He's also on our board, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you, Ghazal. Thank you.
Entrepreneurship is a 24/7 job. Our role in that is to bring it up like we would bring up our child. Entrepreneurship has taught me that sometimes you can get a little more love than you're supposed to get, much more hatred than you deserve, but life is in the middle, so keep walking, keep running, and jump higher. That's it.
Thank you, panelists. Thank you for taking time out.
Can I add one point for women? Find a great co-founder.
Yes.
Sometimes it happens to be your life partner, but otherwise find a great co-founder.
Thank you, panelists, for your time.
Thank you so much. I'm going to request all the panelists to please remain on the stage. And if I could please invite Mr. Arun Singh, Business Head, Fortune India, to please come forward and felicitate all of our panelists. Can we have a louder round of applause for that really cool discussion? We managed to gather some really cool insights. I'd now like to request everyone to come together for a group photograph. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you to all of our panelists for joining us. It's just wonderful to gather their experiences and all that took in terms of founding companies. So with that, what we're now going to do is move forward to our next segment of the program. Now, we often know that in the pursuit of our dreams, there are moments that make us wonder that, oh, but what if I fall? But on the other hand, what if you fly? So that being said, as you all know that this edition of Fortune India's Most Powerful Women in Business is presented by HSBC. We have with us none other than Mr. Sandeep Batra, Managing Director, HSBC India, to speak a little more on giving wings to dreams. So ladies and gentlemen, can we have a superb round of applause? Let's give wings to our dreams and let's have a round of applause to welcome Mr. Sandeep Batra.
Thank you so much. I certainly agree that finding the right co-founder is clearly what is important, and I do intend to speak to my life partner immediately after. So thank you for the tips, the advice, and it was wonderful to be able to speak to everybody here. So we'll just spend a few minutes talking about what we feel is really powering the boom of women entrepreneurs, but also I'll just quickly touch upon some of the things which HSBC has been working on, just finding those, empowering those wings and the role we can play there. So all of us know that access to capital is quite often needed when you're starting the process of entrepreneurship. This is a part where the digital economy clearly is now coming together, and that is one of the large parts why we believe that this boom is starting. The second is the takeoff of online selling. The whole platforms, as we spoke in the last panel, you could really get started on your business at home, whether in education, in e-commerce, in education, and really that boom, the startup ecosystem, the digital ecosystem, and online selling coming together, really powering that. And to make your brand popular, to enable to fly, the social networks clearly allowing a reach like never before for all entrepreneurs, but even more for the women entrepreneurs. But at HSBC, we believe that engaging with a large number of clients, engaging them with them, we have engaged over 500,000 people on microfinance, on raising capital, on actually enabling their business. We've been building a knowledge and skills for these people across the farm and the non-farm sector. So while playing a role as a traditional bank, we're really reaching out to a large section of society, empowering them. And then we want to build capacities for 200,000 farmers on farming techniques, on climate change, improving their productivity and enhancing their incomes. But that's for the women entrepreneur. But we also employ 40,000 people in India. A large number of that workforce is actually women. So we want to walk the talk. We want to bring the initiatives at HSBC for our colleagues to make sure that they succeed while they become a part of HSBC. Some of the initiatives we have launched include Power to Her. This is a campaign where women who've taken a career break for whatever reason, for changes in family, for having a child, for any life stage, we have launched a specific campaign to be able to welcome these women back to the workforce, allowing smooth incorporation of them with our workforce. We have a program on Ascend, which is around women leadership, providing the mentorship, coaching, mentoring. We have a Mothers on Board program. We have childcare benefits, and of course, support programs. When I look at the testimonials of our women staff, of our women partners, many of the testimonials talk about how they were near giving up, but the support, the programs allowed them to continue, and with Power to Her, we are finding a large number of women really coming back. The future, we believe, clearly is with the women. My tie reflects the rise of powerful women. We're all aligned. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, not taking too much time, I would love to thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Mr. Batra, I'm going to request you to please remain on the stage. And once again, if I could please invite Mr. Arun Singh, Business Head, Fortune India, to please present a token of gratitude to Mr. Sandeep Batra. Thank you once again, Mr. Batra, for those endearing thoughts. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's march ahead because it's time for another very pertinent conversation coming your way. And as we all know that today organizations increasingly feel the need to ensure that their workforce mirrors their consumers. Now, this includes not just having more women, but also hiring people with disabilities, or for that matter, from the LGBTQ community, senior citizens, as well as people from diverse educational backgrounds. A diverse workforce helps build inclusive products and services for the companies. So this is our panel, which is titled Workforce Mirroring Consumers, The Great Connect. And to spearhead this conversation, once again, I'm going to invite on stage Ajita Shashidhar, Editor-at-Large, Fortune India. I'm also going to request her to set the tone and invite her panelists. So once again, Ajita, over to you.
Thank you, Kavya. Good evening, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the panel discussions. You're finding it insightful and are learning a lot. So now we come to the last panel discussion, which is on the importance of your workforce mirroring your consumers, and for which I have stalwarts in this room who are going to be part of the panel. May I invite Mr. Anuj Poddar, MD and CEO, Bajaj Electricals, Mr. Anil Verma, CEO, Godrej & Boyce, Mr. P. Vishwanath, CEO, Randstad India, and Mr. Santosh Iyer, MD and CEO, Mercedes-Benz. Thank you for making it for this panel. So I would first like to begin by asking a few questions to the audience, especially the women in this room. So how many of you, would have loved to have your smartphone, look a little trendier and smarter? Okay. Okay. And how many of you have kind of gone to a party or a social do, and when you want to have a single malt, but the bartender forces you to have a sweet cocktail. So I'm sure that happens many a times to all of you. So, and similarly, all of us like to drive an SUV, and I found many friends I have who have told me that SUV is great, but the day they need to drape a sari, they find it very difficult because the height, it's too high. So jumping into the car becomes difficult. So we are all surrounded by stereotypes, and organizations are realizing that we need to break the stereotypes, and a great way to do it is to ensure that your workforce mirrors your consumers. So let's see what the stalwarts of the industry have to say. We'll start with you, Mr. Verma. You come from a very traditional sector company, and how important is it for your workforce to mirror your consumers?
Yeah, so a brief about the company I work. So we are into 14 businesses, and I'm glad Vivek has walked out. He's a dear friend. So we are a nightmare for all strategy consultants. But essentially, these 14 businesses can be bucketed into 4 clusters, and the biggest is B2C. So we make appliances, locks, home furniture, do home interiors. And the size of these businesses is about 1,20,000 crore in India, and it's growing. Now, if you look at the size of the market itself, this is the economic reality, and if one has to capitalize on it, one needs to know who are the strong influencers or the decision makers for these categories. So what's clear is that women, and I'm speaking of women, play a leading role as far as decision making for appliances, furniture, locks, and a lot of home improvement stuff goes. So what's helped us is to have people at our end, within Godrej, and I would say outside the fence, who mirror the influencers. Where we have benefited, if I may say so, is by having employees who mirror consumers. I think we gain on the factor of relating well with what the consumers want. That's one. The second is in terms of empathy, in terms of using the products. The third is, employees being non-judgmental. So the gender generally helps. And the fourth is communication and translating these nuances into insights and then into design. And so it's not only the product or the offerings, but it's the go-to market and the back end. So we have gained a lot. And one of our success stories has been we make refrigerators. And many years back, we had a blockbuster product. And I just thought the innovation was there was a radio attached to the refrigerator. And that's nothing great, but it's sold. And I think the singlest success factor for this product launch was we had women, and they had conversations with consumers, the influencers, and they said, yeah, we understand, we have to spend time in the kitchen, and we are busy, we enjoy it. And for our insight was, how do we make it a little more exciting? How do we make it a little better? But when I speak about mirroring customers, I just want to say we should not restrict to the front end. That would be terrible. I think there's a second dimension, which is in terms of skill set and capabilities that they bring. So we run factories, 11 locations all over the country. HR and I are sitting here today. And in places like Goa, and there are certain advantages, well, we have more than 40% of our workforce who are women, and I think they're doing a great job. And this is again a category which goes to households. And the third part, which is, bringing in diversity, I think it should not be restricted to numbers. I think they need a voice, that's one. Number two is I think when we look at diversity, at least in the company I work, it's the heterogeneity in thinking really helps. And then there are many more cases that I could speak about perhaps a little later. So having good numbers, but giving them a voice, and in making sure that they are in critical functions. So if I were to move away from the workforce, maybe more in the management categories, marketing is dominated by women, legal is dominated, audit is dominated by women. I think they do a great job.
Mr. Vishwanath, you help people attract the right kind of talent. So it'll be interesting to hear from you, how important is it for the workforce to mirror consumers?
Thank you. And it's absolutely important. And let us look at which are the most advanced countries in the world, and let's say United States. It's full of immigrants, right? Almost 60–70% of the states is immigrants. And that's perhaps what has resulted in its being a market leader, developed nation. And look at some of the states also in India. You talk about Mumbai, very cosmopolitan. You have, and then you also have a few other states which have made progress. Some of the states haven't. So if you look at it, diversity breeds progress. It brings progress. And when you take another step back and look at what do consumers actually want? One, when they buy products or services, the first thing they want is good customer experience, right? And how do you get customer experience? When people in your workplace are loyal to the company and they are able to provide that experience to their customers. If you look at, again, consumers need innovative products. How can you get innovative products? It is only when you have creative people. The other thing is about, okay, I want it at a very competitive price. Only when your workforce is productive, you are able to make products at a very competitive price. So in a way, I think, I think unless your people are able to mirror those things like, they are the most productive, the most creative, I think you are not going to be having that in that leading edge. So to me, I think it's not a compromise. It is a must-have today, whether it is diversity or inclusion. And as Randstad, we operate in 39 countries. We recently changed our company's mission to be the most equitable and the most specialized talent company in the world. So and we all know that today talent is scarce, talent is borderless, and then I think talent also like to be what they are. So I think you need to provide an environment where people can bring their true self forward, and for that I think corporates need to make those changes as quickly as possible. Otherwise, they're going to be redundant.
Thank you. Coming to you, Mr. Iyer, I think let's just talk about innovations directly. The common perception is that a diverse workforce helps an organization to come up with better innovations. And here, let's not just talk about women. Let's kind of talk about probably senior citizens. Let's talk about neurodiverse people. How does it help,
and women, maybe I can only say that now, in the last 1 year, we have seen our penetration on the women buying our cars from 7 to 15%. And then specific to SUVs, we have a GLA where now we have seen 25% of that car is bought by women. So actually my team is now seeing why, and I think your insights on the sari and the climbing, actually I will have to further deep dive into it, but it's increasingly, we see a lot of women also buying luxury cars, which is I think great for the country, and also that shows the transformation that's happening today. When you look at change innovation, we had this COVID lockdown and we were all connected on Teams and all those devices. We said we need to do a transformation of the way we do business, and the traditional automotive model was always, we had a dealer, we used to sell cars to them, they used to sell to the consumer. And that's when we said, if you want to change, I personally also feel that, never let a good crisis go waste, because that's the best time to change. We said, how do we change this business model? And here, our idea was to go direct to consumer. It was never done in India. It was done and experimented in some other parts. But then to achieve this kind of a radical transformation, we said we need to involve stakeholders. and we need to involve diverse stakeholders, because if you go to the traditional teams that we have in our company, they always resist it. They always say this can never happen, because an automotive company selling directly to consumers, how will you manage the sales pressures? How will you manage different topics? So what we did is, first we looked within our retail network, because they are closer to the market. We involved them in our project teams. Then we said that also from a diversity perspective, not only it was women, but also international diversity. So we actually got a couple of guys from Singapore and also from Germany, both extremes, because one is an Asian culture, which actually comes us with certain buying behaviors, and also we are basically a company out of Germany. So we said, let's also get some colleagues from there. And we formed a very different team with different age groups, which worked for 3 to 4 months. The best thing was they were able to be much more convincing that this is the way to go. You know, if you would have followed the traditional route, we would have only met how it cannot be done, but we could find a very positive spirit with this group coming back saying how it can be done. And they challenged the status quo, and today actually we are now almost 1 year into the transformation. It's extremely successful. Many OEMs, even I heard in India, I was in some of the award function last week and even yesterday, and I could hear them considering a transformation in the business model. So I think these are proofs to say that if we don't have an inclusive, you know, we don't have project groups which actually challenge the status quo, and that can only come with diverse views, not only from a gender perspective, but even region, I would say. You know, the other example is, you know, we are a company, a German company based in Pune for 28 years now, and so the workforce there a couple of years back was all Pune, typical Puneris, which also is great. A lot of engineers in the company, but then engineers, and the culture was revolving around the location, which is Pune. We also challenged that. We said, no, this needs to change, and we need a workforce which comes from different parts of India to start with, because our customers are there, and they need to represent different views. So apart from only looking at gender, which we are doing very significantly, we are also now shifting this focus to ensure we get diverse workforce. And I think Vishwanath made this point, you know, clearly people from different parts, they also come with different perspectives and views. So these examples hopefully give some perspectives, and successful ones, to see why diversity is important and how it can help innovation within the company.
Mr. Pudar, now coming to you. So by kind of not having, I mean, you're again a very traditional company, trying to modernize yourself now. So by, you know, not having a diverse workforce, you know, are you missing out on opportunities in terms of innovations, in terms of you know, agility, a lot of other parameters? Are you missing out on, I mean, it's not just you, but in general, do organizations miss
So I'll come back to that, Ajita. I just want to, you know, build a little bit on the earlier question. And by the way, we are more diverse today than we used to be, right? When I first joined the company, it was about 4 years ago. And when I first visited our R&D center, I went there, you know, I just saw it's a bunch of engineers, a bunch of techies, and that's the world they think in, you know. And I'd see our products, let's say it's a mixer grinder. They were thinking about how to make that more digital, put in IoT. You can have an app from your mobile phone to control your mixer grinder. Who wants to control the mixer grinder from an, you know, with an IoT app from the, you know, mixer grinder? What problem are you, from the mobile, what problem are you solving for? Complete disconnect to the consumer, because you're thinking like a techie, like an engineer, not like a consumer. And when we push these guys to go out into the market space and talk to our consumers, in this case, mostly women. I don't want to stereotype that cooking is women, but, you know, that is the reality. And the women didn't care about that. They cared कि जब मैं mixer में मसाला पीसती हूँ, haldi comes out, and my white mixer becomes पीला, and I keep trying to scrub it, and it doesn't become clean. And that's the real problem, that, you know, in 3 months, my mixer looks old. And then we've solved that. We've used material science. You yet have to use science, but created a stain-free mixer, and the polymer is created such that, you know, you piece whatever masala you want in it, and it'll yet not be stained, right? So that's one example. I want to give you 2 more examples on how diversity plays a role. And, you know, since I have the benefit of my co-panelist from Mercedes, so I have a Mercedes car, and I have another car, and I keep telling my daughter, she's about 20 years old, that take the Merc to drive. And she would keep saying no, right? And I didn't figure why she doesn't like to drive the Merc, but the other car, which is lesser good. And then one day she told me, you know, the pedal of the Merc, the accelerator, is very high, and it's clearly designed by a man with long feet, right? And therefore, she just doesn't want to drive the car simply because that pedal is not suitable for her. So not even the SUV problem, right? And this changes the worldview because that's the last of the reasons I was thinking of why it would be. Third example, actually, I want to move this beyond diversity or reflecting the consumer is not about gender or LGBTQ, etc. only. It's, my previous company, I used to be in a media content company. It was Viacom. We had television channels, colors, etc. And we used to make movies, right? And I'm a I've been born and brought up in Mumbai all my life. And I would listen to these script narrations from people who would come and present or pitch content to us, whether it's a movie script or television content scripts. And the best script writers, the best directors are always the ones that come from heartland India, from the grassroots. Because that's the real India, that's the real consumer. Who watches your film? It's not the guy in South Mumbai. It's the people, pan-India, etc. And you listen to the stories of these writers, the ones who come from that setting are the ones who have real story with real depth. You listen to a story from a guy who's, lives in Juhu and narrates it. It's so flaky. He's trying to contrive. He doesn't have the real story coming in. So, the diversity is not just about gender, but also urban, heartland, rural, whatever else it is. You do have to cover bases. Do I have more time, or I want to come back to the traditional company part. So, the other challenge we're dealing with at Bajaj Electricals, we are an 80-year-old company. And, traditionally, when I joined, it was a promoter-run, very old-school company. No first names, there was Sir Sharma ji, etc. We had 17 layers in the organization, very bureaucratic. Most people around for 20 years, and of course, a very male company. And there are many challenges we are solving for. And then it comes from an ethos, right? It was an ethos, promoter, vegetarian, non-smoker, do good, etc. And I'm non-vegetarian. I am vegetarian. I don't smoke. But how can I expect 2,000 people will, be vegetarian and not smoke, etc. So gender was one of my many issues that we had to solve for. But that starts from not saying that, okay, go out, let's, take a target, change the gender. It starts from a narrative that you have to actually, what is the society you're a part of? And then how do you adapt to that in terms of time, in terms of contemporariness? And I can, get more into how we did that. But we really moved the needle and narrative in the organization to reflect the world outside.
Interesting. So, okay, all organizations, most of the organizations, the forward-looking organizations, are doing their bit in, hiring more women, hiring more people from diverse backgrounds. But I write on this sector, on this segment quite a bit, and when I talk to people, when I talk to women especially, and even women leaders at the senior level, they have kind of told me about an unconscious bias. So it's not that, they get hired. Nobody has a problem with their credibility, the way they work. That's not an issue at all. But when it comes to moving up the ladder, very often there are biases. Suppose typically in a sales role, a woman is not kind of allowed to, they don't typically want to move them because to get the next promotion, they have to get moved to a newer role or move to a newer city. They don't because they feel that it's not fair to move. She has a family, so it's not fair to move her. So, and that's how their growth gets stunted. And women, in today's times, most of them don't have a problem with that. So, Mr. Vishwanath, I would like to hear from you. Is there unconscious bias in corporate India, and how does one get over it?
Oh, absolutely. And earlier this year in Randstad, we made every employee do a training program around conscious inclusion. And we as a recruitment company interview thousands of people, and we also see corporates, looking at selection criteria. And I think some of the things that we see is clearly reflecting a bias. So if it is typically, in interviews you have seen women employees, not being chosen for certain roles. So there is some stereotyping that happens. Oh, this is not going to fit. This person might go on maternity leave for 6 months, so I got to still pick up the cost, and I'm going to own that headcount, typically those things. There is also this big thing about even when you are offering an increase, you always look at what's the current salary, and then you offer a 25 or a 30% or whatever. We got to pay what the role demands. And then there is also this thing about the gender pay gap. Usually men get paid higher than women for the same role. So again, that's a unconscious bias, right? So there are a host of them, and I think it needs to change, and the change can happen only when your mindset changes, right? So yeah, I think we see quite a lot.
Mr. Verma, how do you deal with unconscious biases, not only at the leadership level, but across categories, across levels?
Oh, I think the tone is really set at the top. And in our case, we are fortunate. I think looked at human capital, and we've said, how best can we use this particular person? So in our organization, the fast trackers have been women. I used to be in human resources. I achieved at a particular level. And this is my colleague Harpreet who's sitting here. I think she achieved that position 10 years younger to the level I was in. So I think also the fact is, if you look at competencies, capabilities, if that's the currency, number one. And number two is, if as an organization you are willing to do something which I would call unconventional and take, I won't call it a risk, but it's about having an open mind. So for example, we are just setting up a huge factory campus. It's at a place called Khalapur. It's near Kapoli. So that's 350 acres. So we are putting in a lot of manufacturing plants, and we are setting up capacities, and I think the investment is beyond 3,000 crores. And the design lead from my company is a lady. So as I said, it's not only numbers, sometimes the voice that we give. And she interacts with the government officials. She interacts with the Tata Consulting Engineers. I can take their name because we work with them. She designs the buildings. And she's been involved right from the purchase of the land to setting up the factories. And when she was designing the factories, I just asked her, I find something different. And the difference she brought in was, typically factory buildings are rectangular. They would be in greens and blues. And here we have a factory building which is in white and gray. To the factory building, there are offices, so they have a form. The way we have created open spaces outside the factory, instead of having a single open space, we have broken it up into pieces. So I think, to my mind, the willingness to give charge to people, irrespective of their gender or the places that they come from, that really brings in a lot of advantage. By the way, I do agree with somebody else mentioned in terms of diversity. We recruit from 80 engineering schools all over the country, 80. We recruit from probably 25 business schools. We are in 11 locations, but even for the head office, that's what we do. And as long as we are open, as long as we look at competencies, as long as we leverage strengths, I personally don't see any problems.
Mr. Iyer, how are you helping your women leaders go up the corporate ladder?
Yeah, firstly, as I said, you said about sales and women not being there, but our global head of sales and marketing is a lady, Britta Ziegler. So as an organization, definitely there is no conflict in the roles. But let's come back to India. And here I can say that we look at this at 3 levels. One is at the country, which is at Mercedes-Benz India. How do we promote? Second is we have a lot of stakeholders, our suppliers and our dealer partners. We have more than 2,000 people working there. And what can we do to promote diversity and gender diversity there? And the third is what can we do at the societal level to further encourage this? So firstly, we need to accept that women also like meritocracy. So that's something that within our organization we have to be clear. But we also need to be clear that they need some space considering the societal compulsion. So I think what is a big boon today in our company we can say is the work from home, a high level of flexibility, and this flexibility actually helps them to manage personal, professional life brilliantly. So we have on the one hand the advantage of getting diverse opinions and thoughts and challenges from them. On the other hand, we are able to provide those flexibilities which they have been actually asking silently for many, I would say, years, and we never acknowledged as an organization. Even within this, there is white collar, blue collar, and now we have kept that even within, because we are 28 years in India, a huge manufacturing facility, it was predominantly men. So we took initiative now to induct on the shop floor women there. And then when we started, we inducted around 200 women in the shop floor. they had their own set of challenges, you know, right from repositioning, I would say many amenities for them, to the flexibility that we had to give them to get out of the line. We had to change our work processes. So I think it needs adjustment. It doesn't need any special treatment. They both are differently viewed. And I know many of my women colleagues who also come and say, we don't need anything, just we need understanding in a different manner. And as an organization, if we look into that, I think we are more successful. At our retail side, when we mandated, actually we had to come out with a policy, you know, mandating certain percentiles. So they said why, and that's something. So we had to spend an year or so in convincing them why. Then they came up with the similar challenges. You know, we are in the business of car industry, customer calls late night, is it safe? And then we said, hey, there are many sectors which operate. And I think that way India is a much safer country compared to many others. So we have to educate and have this dialogue constantly. And last not the least, when we look at also societal impact in and around us, we have to promote this also when we do social educational courses. So we need to see how do we make women skillable. You know, we have these engineering colleges, but the pass outs, men and women, it's not about gender here, but they both are non-skillable. So now when we are allocating our funds, we are saying clearly how do we make them more employable, what kind of an training program, you know, what can we give them. So if you work on all three levels, societal, your own corporate, and also stakeholders, I think it's a matter of time we see this change. We can learn also. We can learn from some of the other markets. They have done this consciously and they are quite successful.
An important element of you know, a workforce being diverse is gender pay parity. Mr. Poddar, I would like to hear from you as to what are you doing to ensure that you know, there's gender pay parity in your organization?
You know, Ajita, let me try and answer that in a reverse way. It's what we try not to do and ignore. You know, we try to avoid the wrong conversation. So, like for example, you know, now all of our hiring is gender neutral in the sense that, you know, actually HR tries to go out and get women for a lot of the senior positions, but I tell them go strictly by competence. Don't try to over-index one way or the other. And, you know, more or less, and I think to one of you made the point that you already have a pay range for that role that's assigned. That was not assigned when you chose a candidate. So post that, when a woman, you know, comes in, if she does, then, you know, it's automatically actually setting a pay at a different level. But what we're also trying to do, some of these things, and I'm going to build on, I think your comment earlier that, you know, the tone starts at the top. It's about change management. And, you know, either you can do it by diktat or you can do it by change management. You know, we had this conversation on our board a couple of years ago that when I was presenting this, that we're going to make these changes and do these things, etc. One of our board members is from the US and he comes from California. And he said, look, Anuj, this is the way we did it. We, you know, told our guys that, look, this is what you got to do. Let's say for this example, you have to hire women and pay them. And if you can't do it, I will find somebody else who can do it, right? So that's one way of doing it by diktat, make that happen, and people will fall in line. But guess what? When you do it by diktat, people will fall in line at that level one. But once a woman is in or getting the pay parity, there's going to be rumblings of, you know, snide remarks elsewhere, etc. That is not going to give her the cooperation. So how do you actually not just get them or get them in or not just give them pay parity, but the bigger change management job is to create an ecosystem that genuinely embraces them and embraces diversity and makes everybody, you know, in a way accepting of this diversity, right? So that's a change of narrative. I want to make one more comment, and some of this may not be the most popular comment. Sometimes the biggest resistance to this change or on women is women themselves. Very often, and I'll tell you a very specific issue we deal with, is when as we've increased the female workforce at our workplace, and then there's different dressing styles, the people commenting maximum on the dressing styles of women is other women. And I'm not going to psychoanalyze why that happens, but that's a reality, right? Either you can get sucked into that, or you have to learn to switch off. And that's my point too. Can you actually not do some things and switch off from that conversation, completely ignore it? Either you address it, and sometimes when you go to address it, it becomes a bigger issue that consumes energy, versus just ignore that and move on to a different conversation. And that's a different way of change management. We've seen that at some point that dies down. And all of these issues that we're seeing, actually you just have to leapfrog ahead of them, rather than just keep getting stuck there, trying to deal with them in in that manner. Yeah.
Mr. Vishwanath, what are our organizations doing enough to ensure that there's gender pay parity?
Well,
I want you to talk to me from an industry point of view.
Sure. So what we see in the industry is obviously there are companies which are global companies present in India. they get the benefit of adopting what's happening in other parts of the world. So you see a higher level of adoption when it comes to diversity, EDN, whether it's women or EDNI or people with disabilities. So you see a higher level of adoption in multinational companies. We get a lot of requests from companies specifically to hire diversity candidates. So that's increasing now, so which is a good thing. For us in Randstad itself, I think 47% of our employees are women, and almost 26% of them are in leadership positions. So I think it's also about setting a baseline and also living by example. Obviously, I think it also means that 4 years in a row we are Great Place to Work certified. We are in the top 50 best workplaces for women, amongst large corporates. So again, these are things which help in terms of driving home the message that okay, this is something which becomes imperative. I think the most important thing here is the leadership and also the mindset that okay, we got to make this. On the ED&I side, obviously, I think it's a little bit the LGBTQ plus hiring. I think it's about also the talent pool. Are they ready to work? And this is where organizations are looking at how can we create skilling, reskilling, those kind of initiatives to make them job ready. And then also provide benefits in terms of, what insurance is needed. Sometimes it may require surgeries, So I think these are things which organizations are now willing to provide. More importantly, I think these are people, so they like to be valued for the work they do. So I think it's also about, do they have a sense of belonging in the organization? So it requires a whole lot of change amongst managers, the way they do appraisals, the way they, make a cohesive work environment where everybody can succeed. When it comes to people with disabilities, I think the big challenge is about, are our workplaces ready in terms of both accessibility, in terms of the way we actually, set their KPIs, etc. So even that, I think there is a sweeping change that's happening. More and more organizations. I'm just out of a call with a client who wants to hire about 25 people who have disabilities. So I think progress is happening. It can happen faster, but definitely I think it's moving in the right direction.
Mr. Joshi, coming to Mr. Verma, coming to you, it would be interesting to hear from you what really is your strategy when it gets when it is to get more people, not gender, but other kinds of diversities, like people who are neurodiverse, people with physical disabilities. What really is your strategy there? Are you looking at getting more widening your scope of diversity?
Yeah, so I think we follow two approaches. One is whenever we go for recruitment, and this is at the entry level, one is we have a geographical spread that helps. Number two is we do look at gender, but the broad direction is that our recruitment should mirror the number of women who are graduating from that particular class. Number three is we try to fit people to roles, so looking at their strengths, including physical, what should I say, strengths or gaps with the role that we have in mind. And at the end of the day, the competency lens is very strong. So I think our recruitment process is pretty stringent in terms of A, fitting people with the role, and number two is in terms of making sure that they meet the threshold requirements in terms of both intellect as well as in terms of delivering on the job. And of course, there's a part about the culture fit and the value fit. Our organization, I heard him saying, we are about 125 years old, and we believe there are a lot of good things in the culture that we have today. See, the other part, what we do is, and this is one learning that I've had, if we really want diversity, belief should be that heterogeneity helps. And different kinds of thinking should be acceptable, number one. Number two, I would say scale helps. So you require a critical mass, if I may say so, whether it's people who are physically handicapped, or whether it's women, or whether it's XYZ. That really helps. And the third part is, what we've seen is, we need to have role models. So if you have somebody who's disadvantaged, but he's doing well, or you have a woman who's doing very well, that can be a strong, strong glue.
So would you have any targets I'm not talking just about women, but people with other kinds of, in terms of other kinds of diversities, like do you have any targets? Like HUL has set this target that by 2030, around 10% of their workforce would consist of people with disabilities and other diverse kinds of diversities. So would you have any
The
goals?
answer is no. We just don't talk about quotas. We don't believe in quotas. It's strictly on capabilities and competencies. It's a different matter. And we're a manufacturing company, but I will tell you, perhaps, and we have about 14,500 people. Overall, we would have about 10%, 10 to 15%, diversity. But if I were to disaggregate in terms of geographies or in terms of function, the numbers are much, much more. I spoke about Goa. I could speak about on some other functions where we have people who are a little different, constituting more than 25% of the workforce. We have that. But there's no target, clearly, and we don't want to talk about targets because we don't want anybody to feel that they have been hired because they are special. Everybody who walks into our offices or onto our shop floor is super good. That's what we believe in.
Mr. Iyer, what's your strategy when it comes to hiring people beyond gender?
So I think diversity is part of the ESG goal. So not only in India, but globally also. And first and foremost, we need to ensure facilities exist. As an organization, be for disabled or for challenged, and there are different topics there. So right from ensuring there is a proper workplace for them, wherein they don't feel out of place, to getting the sensitivity in the organization itself. And I think the best things are the examples. So we have a couple of, I would say, colleagues who do a brilliant job, and they are actually also growing in the organization. And that gives confidence to others also to respect them for what they do. So here it's not in general, for gender, yes, we are now driven by targets also, because otherwise we don't force it, it won't happen soon. But for other areas, it's not target linked, but more first trying to make proper, I would say, environment for accommodating these, be it for disabilities or be it for any other, even the elderly. At sometimes, we call them, the space cowboys. They retire, and can they be taken back for certain experiences? But there, I think it's more of the environment that we create, the facilities we give them, and the flexibility we give them. That's where the focus is.
Coming to you, Mr. Poddar, you mentioned that your focus on diversity is rather recent. So ever since you have increased your focus on diversity, how has it impacted growth? Have you seen higher growth rates?
I don't want to put it necessarily in the numbers, in the sense of numbers, because I think that would trivialize the point. I think it's changed our workplace for the better, okay? I will say we have a power infrastructure business. It's only 2% gender diverse in terms of women workforce. But where we started addressing it, if I take our HR team itself, that's, I think, about 40+% women workforce. And I think if HR starts reflecting that diversity, in turn, they're the funnel to actually bring the diversity into the company. The second point I would make here is that, we are Bajaj brand, right? And I would put us, let's say, there are very few brands who can command that sense of scale or omnipresence in India. Godrej is one, Tata is another, where we are not just a commercial brand. We are, in a way, part of the Indian ethos in many ways, Indian families for decades and decades. And therefore, in a way, you are meant to be representative of the larger India. And can we take ownership and pride that we are not a company, not an organization, but we are, in a way, a reflection of this society or this country called India. And therefore, I come back to, can we move that narrative to a different conversation than a numerical and metric conversation, because that, has a very different delivery. And if you do that, one more point I want to make is that D&I, when we talk D&I, we've set up a D&I council, by the way. Their job is not to make everybody feel welcome. Their job is to make everybody feel belonging. Because when you feel welcome, you yet think you're the outsider who's welcome into this organization. This is yours. This organization belongs to every segment of society, just like it does to another segment. So I think I'm coming back to a point that the mindset narrative in the organization needs to fundamentally shift to embracing that true diversity as a very open ecosystem.
So I would like to get your closing comments now, but I would kind of ask you slightly different questions in the sense how, what are the two innovations that you're really proud of in the recent past, which you think was kind of, which happened because of a diverse workforce? Maybe Mr. Pudar, you can start and then we.
You know, how many of you have ovens at home? Almost everybody does. And I can bet your oven is either black or white or silver or chrome, right? It's in, you know, we have two marketing leads. One is a male, one is a female. The female marketing lead, she came up with a rose gold pink oven, right? And I think, why not? Why should an oven be black or white or gold? And I can bet your life. And you look at the appliances across the world. You look at a toaster, they'll be in this, I don't even know the colors, sage, green, etc., etc. And our toasters used to be white and black. And as that starts happening, I think these are expressions of a different sensibility. But I think in terms of, to your point, products, we have many. I told you about the stain-free mixer. It's a rose gold oven that we have, and more such things that we're doing. You know? And I think that's just changing our product profile significantly.
Apart from color in terms of other functionalities, is there anything that you've done differently?
Maybe at a higher level, I think the two innovations that I think we are very proud about. One is having a woman to head IR. So in India, I mean, 50% or more than 50% of workforce is blue collar. They're across 11 locations. Dealing with workmen, dealing with union is a very different ball game. So there's a bit about discipline. There are these long-term settlements to be signed. There are dealings with the government authorities. And we did it, I was about 6 years back, and the experiment has been very, very successful. In fact, I thought the approach that the person brought in was much more nurturing, whereas I think we guys, and I'm guilty of that, we were a little more combative dealing with the union. So that's one. The second thing is, you know, in service, so in a law category, so the service function is headed by a lady. Now that's pretty unusual for us, maybe it's not unusual for others. And we said, let's do it. And, you know, she works, her spouse works. And she said, when we have these technicians going to homes, you know, to fit the high-end locks, or sometimes when people get stranded and because they have misplaced their keys. So she brought in an initiative which was all about telling the house owner, can we just do a security check for the home and we can give you some advice and you don't have to buy any of our products. And then in my conversation with her, I said, what made you think? And she said, see, I'm away from home. I have parents. I lock the room where I keep my valuables. And, you know, we need to look at home security rather than door security. So the innovation, I think, was awesome, personally.
Mr. Iyer.
I think in the earlier discussion, I already gave an example of how diversity really pushed a new business model. But, you know, I can only say that in my management team, my CFO is a lady as such. And last year, when we had one of the best ever results, we actually said her contribution, actually, she transformed in last 2 years what said. So, frankly, it's just not about innovation. Actually, they bring the perspectives that we see with diverse thoughts. And this is why we should also not limit only to gender. We should just go beyond gender, also on geography as well as others. I think that's what it comes to the forefront. On the other side, if I look into Bangalore, we have 6,000 people working in our R&D setup there. We have a lot of women there itself, more than 20-25%. We have many of them filed patents from India on technologies, you know, which will be now taken worldwide. So, you know, we take a lot of pride to say every Mercedes has an India in it because it's all developed out of Bangalore. Many of the things are developed out of Bangalore from an R&D, and we have women colleagues who have filed patents and they have been approved also as such. So, a lot of examples, but some of them confidential because innovations are for the future. We cannot share, but yes, they are all part of the ecosystem.
Yes, your final thoughts on that.
Yeah, I believe culture breeds innovation, right? So, and being in a service industry, I think innovation is about creativity and also doing new ways of, finding new ways of doing things. So some of the things which we see are, you know, whenever your structures or policies or frameworks are being built, we make sure that, typically the issue is, you are in an ivory tower, you make a policy sitting in, let's say, a corporate office. How does it get received in the different branches or the remote locations? So often we lose sight of that. So we have committees which review these policies and give opinions. Does this help the people with disabilities? Does this work for the LGBTQ? So I think we have created those kind of frameworks where people can give us feedback even before these policies are put in place. So I think these are small steps, the way you can breed creativity. And one thing is also, after COVID, I think it's all about humane leadership. And I think when you have a diverse workforce, you get the benefit of, showing that empathy in every action that you take. So I think it's a combination of all this which really makes it diverse.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thanks for the wonderful insights. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. I'm going to request all our panelists to please remain on the stage. And if I could please invite Mr. Sandeep Batra, Managing Director, HSBC India, to please come forward and to also present a token of gratitude to all of our phenomenal panelists here. Now going to request Ajita to join Mr. Sandeep and the panelists for a group photograph as well. Thank you so much again. We managed to gather some wonderful anecdotes and some really interesting nuggets of insights from this panel discussion. With that, as we move forward, let me also inform all of you that this edition of Fortune India's Most Powerful Women is powered by Unnati, a platform that helps women to join the workforce and make a positive impact. In fact, their vision is to empower women to participate in formal labor force and also achieve their aspirations by developing women-only job hubs. Lodha is leading this initiative, so we also urge all of you to join the Unnati program and empower women to enable them to reach new heights. For all the details, you can also connect with the team that is just outside. All that you want to gather about the entire Unnati program, I'm going to urge you to please connect with the team outside towards the end of the session, towards the end of the program. On that note, we also now progress to a very exciting part of the evening today. I must admit that we are deeply honored and delighted to have the presence of Honorable Minister Mrs. Smriti Zubin Irani, Union Minister for Women and Child Development and Minister of Minority Affairs. So firstly, before I invite her, can we have a round of applause to also welcome? So firstly, thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. Thank you very much. And to also invite ma'am, I'm going to invite, yes. But before I invite ma'am and before I invite Rajiv to indulge in a fireside chat, I'm going to firstly play across a very important video for all of you. We in fact have many of the winners who actually shared what power means to the MPW. So let's find that out and let's take a look in the form of the video.
Power to me is great responsibility. It is inclusivity, developing empathy, patience, intuition, and nurturing. If I as a leader can bring a change, even a small one, in the pre-existing mindsets and ideologies about the role of women in the society through thought-provoking, women-oriented narratives, that is power for me.
The advice I would give to my younger self is probably I would let emotions come in the way of my decision making. or some of my decision making would be clouded by emotion when I was younger, which I have been able to overcome with experience and age.
Give your 100% to it. Your family will back you, the world will back you, and we're all watching out for you. So hopeful that I am able to inspire some women to come out of their shell, and education is the key, right? So the biggest gift that we can get as women is education, because when you educate a woman, you educate a generation.
My biggest achievement has been to make my family come to terms that my business is as important as my work. And hence, I'll be dividing my day time accordingly. That said, I'm still a very, very involved mother. When I was expecting my second one, so this guy just comes up to me and says that, now that you're pregnant with your second one, you must be wanting to take things slow. And he largely meant it on the business front. And, I don't know what happened, but my instant reply was, Varun is also expecting, should he also take things slow?
You have to have a real belief and passion in the strategy of what you're building. As a leader, that is so critical, because part of your job is to empower people around you and energize people around you. And if you don't authentically feel that passion, then nobody else will.
The toughest phase, which is also the most rewarding phase. I think it's a little bit like, having a child. You go through pregnancy, and then the reward is there at the end, but you do have to go through that.
You don't have to do everything all by yourself. It's perfectly okay to ask for help. And there are a number of people willing to give it to you, right? So don't be ashamed. When I was younger, you're on this mission to prove yourself, and you actually can miss a lot of opportunities to do a much better job by just taking somebody's help when they offer it to you. So don't be ashamed to ask for help when you need it.
A young girl, as their boss, there were comments on your clothes, on your dressing, on your attitude. And it was pretty demeaning and off-putting, but then I developed a thicker skin.
I don't look at myself through the woman lens very often. So I think of myself as a person. So I don't think that whether I can do this as a woman, I mean, that never occurs to me most of the time. For men talking over women, interrupting women, this does happen a lot. It is pretty pervasive. It happens in the US Supreme Court. It happens everywhere. So that is something that as women, we have to be aware of and assert ourselves and not just, give up.
I'm a very warm person, a fairly authentic person. Authentic sounds lovely, but you mean that authentic means that sometimes means that you're unpolished. If you're in a grumpy mood, people will know you're grumpy. So my employees see that. Right? If I'm grumpy, if I haven't eaten, I've had a bad day, or whatever it is, they'll know it. If I'm upset or something, I'll tell someone and say, listen, I'm disappointed in this work that you brought me. I know you're capable of better. Why are you phoning it in? Right? So a lot of people say, be your authentic self, but authenticity is the opposite of be a nice person. I'm not always nice, but I think I'm always authentic.
All right, we managed to gather as to what really power meant to them. With that being said, we are now setting the stage for another very important conversation. And in order to set the tone and also to introduce our very esteemed guest this evening, I'd like to once again invite on stage Mr. Rajiv Dubey, Editor-in-Chief, Fortune India.
Thank you, Kavya. Thank you so much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First, I wish to thank you all for joining us here at the Fortune India Most Powerful Women in Business Awards. I'm also delighted to introduce our guest of honor, the Honorable Union Minister for Women and Child Development and Minister for Minority Affairs, Mrs. Smriti Zubin Irani. Mrs. Irani is the country's youngest Union Cabinet Minister and the first woman to hold office as Minister for Education and Minister for Textiles. She has also served previously as the Minister for Information and Broadcasting. Mrs. Irani was elected to the Rajya Sabha in 2011. 6 years later, in August 2017, she was re-elected to Rajya Sabha. Her entry into Lok Sabha was even more dramatic. During the elections, general elections of 2019, Mrs. Irani vanquished the Congress in one of its traditional strongholds of Amethi in UP. And like she was just explaining to me, saying that she didn't go to Amethi to just win an election. It was about upsetting, about breaking something that has been, the norm. At the recent G20 meet, Mrs. Irani stressed that to be future ready, we need to make sure that women are at the center of the discourse, and that exactly is what her ministry seeks to achieve. With people-centric programs like Mission Saksham, Anganwadi, and Poshan 2.0, the Ministry of Women and Child Development strives to benefit 2 lakh Anganwadi centers. Under the guidance of the minister, an enabling environment has been created to nurture health, wellness, and immunity of women and children. For instance, the Poshan Tracker app is for real-time monitoring of supplementary nutrition and prompt supervision of services. The minister is also monitoring other key initiatives of the ministry like Mission Shakti for safety and security of women and Beti Padhao, Beti Bachao scheme, which has helped improve sex ratio at birth by 16 points at the national level from 918 in 2014-15 to 934 in FY22. Skilling is in non-traditional livelihoods for adolescent girls, or Betiyan Bane Kaushal, is one of the agenda of the government driven by Mrs. Irani. One of the key initiatives taken by the ministry is the notification of adoption regulations, which seeks to fast-track the process of adoption of children. I would like to now invite the Honorable Minister, Mrs. Irani, for a discussion. Our original agenda for the evening was an address by Mrs. Irani, but at her request, we are now going to have a discussion. There's going to be an opportunity for the audience, and she's going to be open to taking questions from the audience in a brief while. We'll have a quick discussion, and then, please do prepare your questions for Mrs. Irani. Ma'am, please. Ma'am, thank you. Thank you for being here. The rise of the she economy is the theme of our Most Powerful Women Awards this evening. I wanted to start off with that theme, as you had also suggested. What is your assessment of the Indian economy and the rise of the she economy within the economy? Following that, I would also like to understand from you, in the budget, what is it that you would like to tell us about the work that has been, that will go on from here on, or your ministry is introducing in the area of your ministry, Women and Child Development?
Thank you, Rajiv, for the conversation. At the onset, I will take exception to the terminology she economy. Because to presume that we as women will not be interested in the economy as a whole, the we economy, I think is the greatest disservice you do to every female professional or every female citizen of the country. When you talk about the budget, I think that the impression one carries is that the Women's Agency is the responsibility of the Ministry of Women and Child Development alone. For years on end, I have said on many public platforms that till such time it becomes the agency of every gender, every family, you will not see the transition that you're hoping for. And that is why, as a professional politician, as a minister, one of my greatest joys is that the Prime Minister of India leads changes with regards to the Women's Agency. If you look at the immediate past, the G20 presidency, we recently had a W20 meeting in Sambhajinagar, and the lady who began the initiative of W20 said that the initiative was initiated by this group of people from Turkey because they felt that the G20 presidency or the G20 community needed to discuss women's issues, and they did so at the sidelines. They were extremely elated that now the G20 presidency of India brings the women's issues to the main table. And the deliberation at the W20 was that, are we genuinely needed? Because now we have the Indian Prime Minister talking about development economics from the perspective of women and how we are imperative as a gender to a nation's holistic growth. I also believe that when you look at the agency of women, as you so call it, from an administrative perspective, this year, we've had in totality across 60 departments an allocation of over 2,23,000 crores, only for projects which are dedicated to women's needs. But what I am extremely happy about is that out of the 43 departments that were to report the gender budget, I have till now received the gender budget reporting from 41 departments already, which means that there is a fiscal discipline with regards to gender justice, which is now a permanent part of governance at the center. What I'm extremely also joyful about is that the 15th Finance Commission for the first time now has spend tied to gender justice across all panchayats in our country. This tie of funds on the basis of spend for gender is not limited to female-led panchayats. It is now an imperative for every panchayat that a particular amount in the budget has to be spent on issues which women deem fit within the panchayat. This has not happened anywhere in the world. And I think as Indians, we should be very proud that our governance system today does not centralize the spend for the agency of women only at the top, does not talk about it only at the state government level, but now there is a fiscal hierarchy in the country where even the panchayats now have developed the habit of gender spend, which is a huge, I think, achievement. It is a silent revolution which has not found mention, I think, in any pink paper.
In our discussion just now, I was mentioning to you, for instance, that we do the best CEOs list. We do many of these lists, like the next 500. Very rarely do we find women CEOs.
And I think I found the answer in the panel that was before me. I don't know where Ajita is. She should be given a separate award this evening. And I'll tell you why. She politely asked a question, and my respects to all the gentlemen who are on the panel, as to why hire a female leader in a corporate entity. And the response was, because we are nurturing. I didn't go to Amethi because I was nurturing. I was sent because I was the most combative individual the BJP had. And when you're picking the top CEOs, I'm sure in your list of talents, none of the CEOs are supposed to report how nurturing they are. So if organizations are going to pick female leaders as to how compliant they are, how submissive they are, and how nice they are, then you possibly will not find them mentioned at the top echelons of corporate power. And I think that is what needs reflection. That why is it that we want to find amiable women in boardrooms who don't make much of a noise? Why can't we withstand that cantankerous woman who makes sense, and you only, in hindsight, lament the fact you wish you had listened to that cantankerous woman with this huge, rapturous voice who was trying to drill some sense into you? And I think when we start giving those women positions of power within corporate entities, then your top 100 CEOs, trust me, Rajiv, you will need a different men's section. Because they are women with that capacity. The question is, where are the men hiring them?
Now, women representation on company boards has been it's a law.
None of the women who are seated here or possibly read Fortune magazine are talking about a reservation for combative women in companies.
Yes, that's true.
All they want is somebody with the capacity to withstand their sheer energy, their sheer talent. And I believe that if that sheer capacity exists in the HR segment, and that capacity exists in accepting a tenacious woman in the hierarchy, I think that you will see astounding results. Because if you speak of women in management structures or in organizations, ask any woman what are the challenges we face according to our age. If we are in our 20s, we are told that you're young and inexperienced. Thoda sa patience hona chahiye. If you're in your 30s, you are told, Arey, didn't you just get married? Aren't you going to have a baby? Oh, if you're not having a baby, what's wrong with you? If you're in your 40s, you're told, don't you want to mentor the 20-year-old? And we are looking for young blood. If you're in your 50s, you're told, do you want to mentor the 30-year-old? If you're 60, you're dead because they're like, we want the 20-year-olds. So it doesn't matter which decade our professional life is transitioning to. What matters is who's that individual in a company who looks at a woman and says, this is the combative, or for that matter, this is the balance of talent and this is the balance of tenacity that I want in my company. The problem is, when you're combative, people feel that you're like a bull in a china shop. But the fact that a woman is combative, may be prone to failure, is not easily digested. A combative man can fail. A combative woman, if she fails.
So
all the women are nodding. Half the men are red-faced. That means I'm saying something which makes sense and resonates. Yes.
The issue of women representation on the company boards and the massive challenge still to find the right...
You can't find women? Seriously?
How do you bring about this? How do you bring about a change? And is there something that the government can do?
Let's get men some good reading glasses and looking glasses. Because in a billion-plus country, where, let me give you another example. I have many women in business seated here. But before 2014, if somebody told you that a woman with a rural enterprise can make a business plan, go to a bank, submit it, get approvals, get credit support, come out, ensure that she services her loan well, pays it back, has 0 NPA, and suddenly India will have 230 million such women, you would not believe it. But with Mudra loans, which was not a gendered loan, 70% of the beneficiaries ended up being women. And what were the number of loans given out? 320 million. Which means that over 200 million women in this country have made a cause for what women can do in business. And you're telling me from 200 million women, you can't find women good enough to be on boards? Good enough to be in leadership positions?
So it has to go down to the entrepreneurs and the creators, really.
I think that there is again an assumption that education will bring about a huge change as to how women are perceived.
Yes.
But has it? Again, Ajita is here, brave lady, because she asked one question today. And she's now embarrassed because I'm naming her time and again. She's embarrassed because she asked a question, and I don't know whether the gentleman is in the house, my apologies to him, as to how did you make your appliance company more gender friendly? Women in the front row all heard how the color of the appliance was changed to Rose gold.
Yes.
Now, as a woman who's working, 2 kids, 1 kid just got married, if you tell me, what do I want out of a toaster? I don't care whether it's rose gold, black or blue. I care whether it was toasting at 1 minute and now can toast in 30 seconds because I have absolutely no time. But that question was being answered by an industry leader. So can I expect him to then appoint a woman to a board? Unless she's wearing rose gold, I guess not.
Ma'am, women in politics. Is politics gender biased?
Not at all. Otherwise, a battle axe like me would not be minister consistently for 9 years.
So, should we see more women representation in politics at all levels?
Today, if you look at politics, how do you define female leadership? Of the 3 million women in political offices in the grassroots across the world, 1.4 million women, political leaders at the grassroots, are in India. But they do not get counted by the World Economic Forum in the Global Gender Gap Index. What is fascinating is that the Global Gender Gap Index not only discounts 1.4 million women in India who are voted to office, it discounts female MLAs, it discounts female ministers in state governments, it discounts female MPs, it discounts and does not take into consideration even ministers in the Council of Ministers of Government of India. Now, by sheer the mathematical magic, if you look at counting of these 1.4 million women panchayat leaders, MLAs, MPs, ministers, suddenly India will get ranked higher only on the issue of political equity. It's like the Global Hunger Index. Pakistan does better than us, but Pakistanis are looking for atta, and here in India, we're delivering food to 80 crore people for the past 2.5 years free of cost. We have Gallup calling up Indians and saying, "Bhook lagi hai kya?" I mean, I've not eaten since morning. I've just had 2 cups of cappuccino. You call me, I'll say, "Haan, lagi hai." And suddenly, my name will be tick marked as hungry in India.
What, in your opinion, can digital entrepreneurs do, for instance, to collaborate and handhold the startups, especially women entrepreneurs, because that is going to be really the game changer?
I think that if you want to service the agency of women from a digital entrepreneurship perspective, there are 3 things that we need to do. When the Prime Minister gave the clarion call for Digital India in 2014, there are many who scoffed at him and said, how will you see this percolation of the so-called skill set in the digital world in a landscape which is predominantly rural? We have 622,000 plus villages in our country. What the pandemic did was prove to the global world order that we can adapt and adopt technology with alacrity when need be. How do you service the agency of women? Today, in a country of 800 million plus internet users, the number of women who use the internet is comparatively low. And one of the challenges is not that they don't know how to use the internet, but the internet is not available in their language of choice. So if we start in a country with 16,000 dialects, 125 constitutionally recognized languages, digital solutions in localized linguistic capacities, I think you will service and find more and more women then partake in the joy of the internet and then also help expand their business opportunities. It is not only a win-win for women, it's also a win-win for business.
One of the areas in which women entrepreneurship is really inspiring is the credit culture in the country, self-help groups, and it is also a very assuring or reassuring feeling for many of the small finance banks and others who are dealing with SHGs that women are indeed leading this and creating that assurance to the finance companies that these are their money is safe. What is your sense of other sectors other than this, where we are already seeing a very significant impact, where this can be, where there could be a ripple effect, where this could be created, and whether the government or private enterprises can come together and do something about it.
So if you reflect on the budget pronouncements, it does talk about creating clusters out of self-help group. If you have studied ever the budget lines across the Government of India per year for the past 8 years, you will recognize that collectively across 50 to 55 departments, self-help groups receive credit support worth over 1 lakh crore every year. Only the Ministry of Rural Development can quantify that in the past 8 years, they have transitioned close to 5 lakh crore rupees from the Indian Treasury to the bank accounts of close to 8 million self-help groups and 9 crore women. Which means that yearly now we have fundamental research available as to how this conglomerate of women, between 30 to 32 billion is the kind of monies that they deal with, that they circulate and they service. Which means that there are 3 things that they're capable of. 1, they understand money, they manage it well, and there is a fiscal discipline all of them have displayed, because rarely have I heard of a self-help group failing to pay back, which is a big skill set in the fiscal world. Second is, they are managing this money because they are indulging in local production of some agro-processing unit, or for that matter, some home-based industry. Which means that you have consistently a number of women now, close to 1 decade, who have created that rural and circular economy. Third, these women in self-help groups have shown a propensity not only to save, but their spend on education and health within the family unit is escalated when it compares to other male spenders. So you have women who save, you have women who know finance, and you have women who are good spenders. So from an economic point of view, we now know that you have 200 million plus women in the Mudra Yojana, that you have 9 crore women, which is 90 million women in the self-help group sphere. And at the same time, you have a combine of these, which now have become the entry level in the SME segment. What we now need to do, and I'm hopeful that industry leaders do this, is to pick possibly industrial area-wise, or those who depend and have an agency or an organization that can service craft-based industry, is to bring them together and see which segment of this can transition into mid-sized companies.
Sure.
If we do that, I think we'll do a great service to the female entrepreneurial skill of our country.
Yeah, I think this hall is full of very awe-inspiring leadership, and I'm sure they will take note of it. Before I, open this floor for questions from the audience, ma'am, would you like to announce about the discussion?
So I got a bit peeved, and somebody I really, really admire and love is in the audience right now. She is here, but she didn't see me when I was peeved. Before she got here, we had a panel of gentlemen who spoke about how they hire women because we are very, very nurturing and not combative. And her eyebrows just went, what? So I'm happy to announce, Ajita, given the grace with which you handle those comebacks from the gentlemen, that between the Ministry of Women and Child Development and the team at Fortune, I would genuinely want to research as to why Fortune magazine, when it goes looking for the top 100 CEOs in the country, does not find women. What are those attributes?
Thank
that
you, ma'am.
we now need to reach out to organizations and tell them that maybe they're a bit skewed in terms of how they recognize that leadership skill, or what are those attributes that women need to imbibe in the workforce? What are those attributes that negate circumstances for women to be promoted into positions of power and positions where there's more money and spending power in a company? So I'm hopeful that between the two organizations, we can find some useful pointers for the way ahead.
We'll most definitely work on this. Thank you so much for this honor. I would like to open the floor for questions, if there are any from audience.
Well, the women are smiling and laughing. I don't know whether men have any questions.
Any questions? Anybody, please raise your hand. Yes, ma'am, there.
Hello, ma'am. A huge fan, so I'm having a fangirl moment right now. I'm Gopali. I work for Accenture and have been through some of these journeys that you spoke about, right, in terms of rejection, etc. My question to you is, how do you make the change, right, at the grassroots level? I have 2 boys, and I'm trying to raise them differently. But I think the mindset has to change, whether it's a woman or a man, right? Even as a mother, my mindset has to change in the way I raise my boys. What is your point of view on that, ma'am?
I think that you're absolutely right that the change has to begin from families. Change also has to begin from how we help children develop their cognitive skills. So while we are looking now at more and more possibilities, I mean, the dichotomy is that 46% of STEM graduates in India are women. But if you look at their transition into science-based enterprise, it's less than 30%. And that happens because you can possibly push only up to a certain level when it comes to women and science, but it's very rare when such women are taught how to commercialize their innovation. Now, when we did a research on this particular aspect, we found that when a toy is introduced to a child, how many of us give building blocks and a truck to a girl, vis-a-vis how many of us give it to a boy child? How many of us sit and talk maths with a girl child as compared to what we do to the boy child? How many of us tell the girl child, okay, it's lovely to wear pink and hence set a color tone in her head, as compared to how many of us actually do not denote a color to a boy child? So though the methodology sounds very simple, that it's about raising a culture, the complexity is in the little crevices in which bias hides. So many a times we don't intend to be biased. Many a times we possibly mean nurturing is a big compliment, but we do not realize how we are manifesting a bias, and that bias then carries forward. So I think that as a mother, you've at least begun right by saying, I need to decide that I want that change coming from home. And I also think that apart from home spaces, we also need to ensure that the education around gender is something that is diversely proportionate to the kind of population we have. For instance, if and when Women's Day comes closer, everybody that you know will talk about this woman broke the glass ceiling, that woman broke the glass ceiling. But ask them, where did the term glass ceiling come from? It came from a management consultant 45 years ago. Why? Because her boss told her, you're good, but you need to smile more. It came because she wanted somebody to have sexual harassment laws at her workplace. And the United States of America then was bereft of such a strong law. Now look back. The law for prevention of sexual harassment at workplace came in 2013. But if you actually read the Arthashastra, in that there is a law denoted punishment by the king to an individual who has gone from the treasury side to a family or to the workplace of a woman and has harassed that woman. What is the punishment that the king should mete out to such an individual? Which means sexual harassment law at workplace finds a mention in the Arthashastra. But how many of us talk about it? there'll be absolutely no mention about it. There will be a conversation about glass ceiling. Vis-a-vis a country where from the day that we were a democratic nation constitutionally, women and men had equal rights to vote. We compare ourselves to nations where women had to tie themselves to benches in parliament so that they could get the right to vote. So how many decades have we lost comparing apples and oranges?
Thank you so much.
Can we take, yeah.
Bhavi's on
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Pushpa Shah, Chartered Accountant. Ma'am, I want to ask you, what are the tips you would like to give to women who want to rise in the political leadership, and what attributes they should have, and how their voice can be heard?
Have you ever seen a man ask a man for advice? I think the greatest compliment you can pay to the female kind, especially in politics, is to recognize that absolutely no male politician has ever gotten up and asked no male politician, tell me how to go ahead. I think there needs to be a recognition that you have significant talent to rise in politics on your own. Just when you want to compete, don't compete with only women. Find the best man that you can also beat only on the basis of your talent.
Ms. Sambani has a question.
So Smriti ji, just in continuation of, it's just a remark of what you were saying, is that I think we need to educate both our boys and our girls. When I started working at the refinery 30 years ago and wore a hard hat, they all called me sir. And I had to keep on telling them I'm not a sir, you know. But it was impossible. It was all men team. So for them to understand that there's a woman there working on with a hard hat is difficult. So if you want to raise your girls and boys equally, I think the imaging on TV, on advertisements, on movies, that has to change, because it's being consumed all over India by all these young minds. So I think as a group together, each woman needs to kind of look how we can educate our kids equally. So that was my only remark, I thought.
And I think it's interesting when you say that when you wore that hard hat, you were called sir, because that was an image of a person with power. That was the image of a person with technological know-how. That was the image of a person with purpose. And the only linguistic possibly image that would resonate in that individual's mind was sir. So I think the fact that now, and it happens to women in uniform, it happens at times to even ministers like me. And I think that you're right that one, the language capacities and complexities in terms of the balance of power is essential. How women are perceived and young women are perceived is extremely essential. Also, I think conversations about women is very essential, and those conversations need help not only in family circumstances, they definitely need help even at workplaces and organizations. Because many a times I feel that people unknowingly at times seep in a bias. I think the pandemic has been a big revelation, because before the pandemic, after pregnancy, if a woman said, I will work for home, it was a death knell for her career. It was literally a lovely farewell we gave to female professionals. The pandemic got men working from home, and suddenly it was kosher for the entire industry. So I think that from coming from a time where a lady with a hard hat today to a lady who doesn't need a hard hat but still exudes power, you've come a long way.
Okay, we'll take one more question.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, please.
So this is slightly a personal question, but just to get some advice. So I've been working for the last 25 years, and you know, I love the job, but of course need the income, you know, to give the life for. I have 2 kids. I've been quite inspired today meetings. I mean, seeing so many, you know, entrepreneurial women.
What's your name?
My name is Somani. So I'm very inspired, but I don't think I have the guts to drop the job and become an entrepreneur. I work like an entrepreneur, but I need that monthly income at the end of the month. So, I mean, what would you advise?
So I come in 1998, when the first McDonald's opened in Bandra. I used to work there sweeping floors. I made $1,500. So I know exactly what you feel. And before that, when I got Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi, I had my last $200. But that job paid $300 more than the McDonald's job. The issue is that it's lovely for politicians like me or other thought leaders to talk about it, but inspiration and aspiration, that journey in between those two words, is a tough one and costly one. There's a personal cost to it. So I'll be very blunt. If you're happy to pay that personal cost, by all means, run to the aspiration. But if you want to be pragmatic because you have 2 kids, because I made that run before I got married and I had 2 kids. So the fact that you're a conscientious parent is a compliment to you as a human being. I think many women have the capacity to lead, but curtail themselves because they are more tied into their responsibilities, and there's a cost to that ambition. And the toughest sacrifice is sacrificing your own ambitions, knowing you have the talent, so that your kids can sustain themselves. So my compliments, my best wishes. If you can afford it, make a run to that aspiration. And if you can't, somebody in this room someday will hire you or support you to make that dream happen. I believe this. Otherwise, you would have never gotten up and asked me this question, because it takes a lot of courage to expose yourself as a professional, stand up and admit that about yourself. So you've taken the first step. Before you run, that's your first step.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your questions. I'm afraid we'll have to move on. Ma'am, with your permission, shall we start with the award ceremony? Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Can we have a huge round of applause? First up, ladies and gentlemen, everyone. And I'm going to request Honorable Minister, Mrs. Smriti Irani ji, to please remain on the stage, ma'am. And before we get started with the awards felicitations, I'm also going to request you to please unveil the latest issue of Fortune India magazine. So let's have the unveiling right away. Latest issue of Fortune India. Thank you so much. So I'm going to be requesting Mrs. Irani ji and Raji Dubey to please remain on the stage as we're about to get started with the awards felicitation. That being said, when I was invited to host this spectacular evening, I actually decided to choose a 45-year-old handloom sari. This sari belongs to my mother-in-law's mother-in-law, in fact. And the reason I'm sharing this is because I realized a sari is the only piece of garment that does not come with a tag like M, L, XL, none of it. So a sari never asked you to fit in, but it actually blended with you and made you stand out. Just like the women over here who did not decide to read a blueprint that was handed to them, they decided to make their own rules and at the same time weave a 6 yards of legacy for the other women to be inspired. So let's have a round of cheer for all the amazing and all the powerful women here. And we're truly, truly inspired, truly delighted to have you all. With that, without any further delay, let's get the awards proceedings started. And With that, the very first MPW award this year goes to a leader who's a director at India's biggest corporate entity and who leads a foundation that is the biggest spender in uplifting lives and livelihoods across the country. Please put your hands together for none other than Mrs. Neeta Ambani, Director, Reliance Industries and Chairperson, Reliance Foundation. I'm going to be requesting to kindly proceed slightly forward. We've got a marking there. This is to ensure we get the optimum angles and our photographers capture the best of it. So with that, let's move ahead and let's invite our next winner, or if I may say, winners. They are none other than the Reddy sisters of Apollo Hospitals. And we have with us Sunita Reddy, Managing Director, Apollo Hospitals, here to receive the honor. Our next winner is someone who helped change our communication means during the pandemic and after. None other than Aparna Bawa, COO and Interim Chief Legal Officer, Zoom Video. While Aparna is based in the US, we have Iravati Damle, Director Government Affairs, Zoom India, to receive the award on her behalf. Our next winner this evening, whose untiring work has got the world hooked to streamlining entertainment to their personal devices across the world. The winner is Bella Bajaria, Head of Global TV, Netflix. We have with us Monica Shergill, Vice President Content at Netflix India, to receive the award on her behalf. Now, before we move ahead to announcing the next winner, let me tell you that there's a wonderful quote. A woman on a mission needs no permission. It's as simple as that, which is why every time we announce the winners, let's have a thundering round of applause. Let's do that, because the next winner, that's right, the next winner is someone who has helped develop a vaccine so that each one of us could remain safe and healthy. Please put your hands together for Suchitra Ella, Joint Managing Director, Bharat Biotech International. We in fact have with her dynamic daughter, Jalachari Ella, Head Corporate Strategy, to receive the honor. And with that, our next winner is none other than Rekha N. Menon, Chairperson and Senior Managing Director, Accenture. While Ms. Menon here is represented by two of her senior-most colleagues and managing directors of Accenture India. So let's also have a round of applause to welcome Aarti Kuchibhatia and Gopali Contractor to receive the honor on behalf of Rekha Menon. I must admit that it truly seems like the farmer season is here for Fortune India's MPW Awards, because our next winner is none other than Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, Executive Chairperson, Biocon. While Kiran is traveling abroad, we have Shafali Mishra, Group Vice President, Public Policy and Government Affairs, Biocon Group, to receive the award on her behalf. Our next winner for the evening is a go-to person for some of India's biggest mergers and acquisitions. Ladies and gentlemen, none other than Zia Modi, Managing Partner, AZB and Partners. Now, we all know that India is a young country with almost half the population below 25 years. The next winner, in fact, caters to the needs of the really young ones. Let's hear it for Ghazal Alag, co-founder and Chief Innovation Officer, Mama Earth. Well, let's take those smiles and that inspiration forward, because our next winner has helped create India's biggest retail and telecom companies from the scratch. None other than Isha Ambani, Director, Reliance Jio and Reliance Retail. We have with us Neeta Ambani ji to receive the award on behalf of Isha Ambani. Our next winner, ladies and gentlemen, has headed one of India's largest and most complex state-owned enterprise. Our winner is none other than Alka Mittal, who happens to be the first ever woman chairman and managing director at ONGC. Firstly, let's have a round of cheer. And since Alka Mittal is not keeping well, we have J.R. Vijay Rai, Executive Director, Head Regional Office Mumbai, and Meghna Pegu, DGM HR at ONGC Mumbai, to receive the honor on her behalf. Our next winner this evening is from the tech industry, none other than Roshni Nadar, Chairperson, HCL Technologies. And since Roshni is traveling, I'd like to invite Anandita Chauhan, Senior Vice President, to receive the award on her behalf. I think what I'd like to also share is that I started my career with HCL Technologies, and it's the entrepreneurship at HCL that allowed me to follow my passion, so congratulations to the entire team. Moving ahead, it's time to also announce the next winner, someone whose actually firm deftly handles stock market volatility on a daily basis. Please put your hands together for none other than Padmaja Chunduru, Managing Director and CEO, NSDL. let's take that momentum forward because the next winners are sisters who have ensured that you get a tasty beverage whenever you are at some of the most affordable prices in the world. We have the winners, none other than Shauna Chauhan, CEO, Parley Agro, and Nadia Chauhan, Joint Managing Director and Chief Marketing Officer, Parley Agro. Can we have a refreshing round of applause, everyone? Let's hear it. Our next winner is a teacher who co-founded one of the most valued unicorns in the country. No guesses there. Please put your hands together for Divya Gokulnath, co-founder of Byju's, that ensured kids across the country does not lose out even during the pandemic. Marching ahead, our next winner is also from an industry that literally changed our lives over the last 2 years. Well, I'm sure every one of you have managed to plug into streaming video shows. Please put your hands together for Aparna Purohit, Head of Indian Originals, Amazon Prime Video, India. Our next winner is a leader who heads the India operations of a foreign bank. Can we have a dynamic round of applause for none other than Zarin Daruwala, CEO, Standard Chartered Bank, India. Well, if I have to talk about our next winner, well, she's adept at creating magical stories for the audiences at one of the most recognized streaming media companies in the world. Please put your hands together for Monica Shergill, Vice President Content at Netflix India. Moving ahead, our next winner is Pallavi Shroff, Managing Partner, Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas. Well, since she couldn't make it here, I'm going to... All right, ma'am, we're going to do the honors. But I've also been informed we have Rupal Kulshrestha. Yes, we have Rupal Kulshrestha, the partner at Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas, to please receive the honor. The next winner, ladies and gentlemen, has made an indelible mark in the highly competitive insurance industry. So we got to ensure that we have the loudest round of applause. Let's put our hands together for Vibha Padalkar, Managing Director and CEO, HDFC Life. We also have another winner from the healthcare sector running one of the fastest growing healthcare companies in India. None other than Alicia Mupen, Deputy Managing Director, Aster DM Healthcare. We'll have a healthy and a happy round of applause. Let's hear it for Alicia Mupen. Now, in a stressful world, The preeminence of entertainment can never be overstated. Our next winner, in fact, is none other than the Joint Managing Director and Creative Director at Balaji Telefilms. Yes, we're talking about Ekta Kapoor. So first up, can we have a round of cheer? And I've just been informed that she's here. I know this is a prime time slot, so it is only befitting that we'll have Ekta joining us in just a minute to also receive the honor. So we're just going to hold on to that. This is like that moment wherein we have some advertisements before the prime time serial is right up in the air. So we're just going to hold on to that. All right, so we're going to take that momentum forward by moving ahead, and then we'll come back. That being said, let's also announce our next winner. We in fact have none other than Anjali Bansal, founding partner, Avana Capital. Someone who's worn many hats that include being member ONDC, member Niti Aayog Evolution Review Committee, all that and more. Anjali Bansal, ladies and gentlemen. Our next winner is a stock market diva. Please put your hands together for Devina Mehra, founder, chairperson, and managing director of portfolio management services firm First Global. Well, the next winner this evening, ladies and gentlemen, is an inspiration herself, an actor who's also made it really big in Hollywood. No guesses there, none other than Priyanka Chopra Jonas. And while we all know that she's in the US, we in fact have the august presence of her mother, Madhu Chopra, and brother, Rakshat Kapoor, to receive the honor. What a delight indeed. If I could please invite you, ma'am, to please come on the stage. As we move ahead, our next winner is from an entirely different industry, showcasing the scope and breadth of where women leaders are making it big. Let's actually hear it for none other than Anamika Khanna with her fashion label AKOK. So let's have a huge round of applause for the fashion designer Anamika Khanna. But I've been informed that she's not here, but that wouldn't stop us from celebrating her. We've almost come towards the end of the felicitations, but that being said, I've also been informed that Ekta Kapoor is almost here inside the hotel property, so we would love for her to come on stage to receive the honor. So we're just going to quickly check with the team, a quick update, what's happening there, because we'll almost come towards the end of all the felicitations. Meanwhile, if I could request all the winners to also come on stage for a group photograph. Yeah, that's fine. So we'll do the group photograph really quick because I know all the winners also would love to, sort of head for their other commitments. If I could request all the winners, ma'am, to please come on the stage. We'll have a quick group photograph. The stage has become already super vibrant. Let's have the winners on the stage. And if I could also please invite Mr. Arun Singh, Business Head, Fortune India, to please also join our winners on the stage. All right, we'll all make some space on the stage so that everybody's captured. as we celebrate all the inspiring names here on the stage and off the stage. They say it's not over until it's over. So I'm going to request all the winners to please take your seats. We are yet to complete the final segment. All right, we're going to do the most millennial thingy, take a quick selfie as well. Let's do that. All the winners in a legendary selfie, as we call it. But I'm going to request all the... That's how it is. I'm going to request the winners to please take your seats. I'm going to request Smriti Irani ji to please remain on the stage. And I'm going to request all the winners to please be seated. It's not over until it's over, so let's have you all take your seats. And if I could please request Mr. Rajiv Dubey to also please felicitate Mrs. Smriti Zubin Irani ji. If I could request all the winners and everyone, please take your seats. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's also time to felicitate a very, very dynamic leader. And I'm sure all of us have all our smiles right up on our faces, because now it's time to applaud for none other than Ekta Kapoor, Joint Managing Director and Creative Director, Balaji Telefilms. And if I could please request Rajiv Dubey to please felicitate Honorable Minister, Mrs. Smriti Zubin Irani ji. And now if I could also please invite Mr. Arun Singh, Business Head Fortune India, to propose a vote of thanks. Everyone, I'm going to request you to please be seated. This is the final segment of the evening. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could request you to take your seats, we have with us Mr. Arun Singh, Business Head, Fortune India, to propose the vote of thanks for this spectacular evening.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you had a great time and enjoyed the evening. As we come to the end of today's program, on behalf of Team Fortune India, I'd like to thank the Honorable Minister, Mrs. Smriti Zubin Irani, Union Minister for Child and Women Development, and Minister of Minority Affairs, MPW winners, distinguished speakers, and participants for taking out time and joining us. This wonderful evening has the presence of an illustrious audience, and it gave us an opportunity to hear celebrated minds and discussions on the rise of the she economy. What makes this annual summit special is the celebration of accomplishments of country's most influential and respected women business leaders. The 6th edition of Fortune India Most Powerful Women in Business event has seen encouragement from all spheres, whether they are our partners or the listers. I'd like to take this moment to thank all our partners for the unflinching support, who not only believe in our vision, but also support it thoroughly. I'd like to thank our presenting partner, HSBC, whose support has been very encouraging, our powered by partner, Unnati, our celebrations partner, Johnny Walker, hospitality partner, ITC Hotel, marketing partner, Creatiges, and telecast partner, ET Now. On behalf of Team Fortune India, I wish to thank everyone for being with us today and hope to see you all next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arun. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, while we come to the end, looks like we managed to raise the bar of the evening, so let's just hit the bar and let's head for networking cocktails and dinner. Please enjoy the conversations and celebrations. And with that, I am Kavya R. Chavli signing off and joining you on the other side of the stage. Thank you. Have a great evening ahead.
Fortune India's most powerful women in business acknowledges the path-breaking contribution